Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto was the Twilight Sage Ranger, wielding both Lee, GHT and Shadow, Naruto x Kira Ford x Elsa, Power Rangers. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. Convergence Point. Sunset painted Konoha in hues of amber and gold, casting long shadows across the village hidden in leaves. Naruto Uzumaki stood atop the Hokage monument, his white sage cloak billowing gently in the evening breeze. At 19, he had grown taller, his jawline sharper, but the determined blue eyes remained unchanged, windows to an unbreakable spirit that had survived war, loss, and the burden of containing the nine tails. You feel it too, don't you? Naruto murmured to the fox within him. Since dawn, Kurama replied, his deep voice resonating through Naruto's consciousness. Something pulls at the natural energy. It's wrong. Naruto nodded, extending his awareness beyond the physical. 3 years of peace had allowed him to refine his sage abilities to unprecedented levels. The natural energy that normally flowed like gentle currents now twisted and churned several miles beyond the village boundaries, specifically, at the Valley of the End. Kakashi-sensei should know about this, Naruto said, turning toward the Hokage Tower. He paused, reconsidering. But if I wait for a team to assemble? The disturbance is growing stronger by the minute. Kurama interjected. Whatever it is, it won't wait for bureaucracy. Decision made. Naruto leapt from the monument, channeling chakra to propel himself from rooftop to rooftop with fluid precision. Civilians below caught only glimpses of white and orange, a reassuring flash that most recognized as their village's most dedicated protector. Azumo looked up from his guard post at the main gate, spotting the approaching figure. Naruto, where's the fire? Hopefully nowhere, Naruto replied, barely slowing. Tell Kakashi-sensei I'm checking unusual energy readings at the Valley of the End. If I'm not back by midnight, send backup. Before either guard could respond, Naruto was already past the gates, his form blurring as he accelerated into the forest. Branches seemed to bend out of his path as he moved, less from chakra manipulation than from years of experience navigating these woods at superhuman speeds. The forest gradually thinned as Naruto approached the historic valley. The statues of Madara Uchiha and Hashirama Senju stood as silent sentinels, eternal witnesses to the cycle of conflict and resolution that defined shinobi history. Between them, the waterfall roared, except something was wrong with the sound. Naruto slowed, his senses on high alert. The waterfall's roar seemed to stutter, as if the very fabric of reality hiccuped around it. Where water should flow in a continuous cascade, it seemed to freeze momentarily before continuing, like a damaged film reel. What the hell? Naruto whispered, crouching on a nearby outcropping. Kit, the natural energy here is being siphoned, Kurama growled, genuine concern coloring his normally gruff tone. Something is drinking this world's essence. Naruto formed a familiar cross-seal. Shadow Clone Jutsu. 3 perfect copies materialized beside him, each nodding in silent understanding before dispersing to secure the perimeter. The original Naruto closed his eyes, palms pressed together as he entered sage mode. Orange pigmentation appeared around his eyes as the natural energy flowed into him, but instead of the usual steady stream, it felt like trying to drink from a river being pulled in 2 directions. His eyes snapped open. There, in the center of the valley, suspended perhaps 20 feet above the water's surface, a pinpoint of darkness had appeared. As Naruto watched, it expanded, widening into what looked like a tear in the very air. The edges of the anomaly shimmered with an oily rainbow sheen, while the interior revealed nothing but absolute darkness. Kit, we should wait for backup, Kurama suggested, uncharacteristic caution in his voice. No time, Naruto replied, leaping from his position toward the growing rift. Whatever this is, it's accelerating. I need to. A pulse of energy erupted from the rift, powerful enough to shatter stone. The concussive force caught Naruto mid-jump, sending him tumbling backward. He recovered with practiced agility, landing in a 3-point stance on the water's surface, chakra automatically stabilizing his position. The rift was now the size of a house, its edges jagged and unstable. Strange. Lightning-like energy crawled across its surface in purple and black arcs. The air smelled of ozone and something else, something alien that made the hairs on Naruto's neck stand up. I don't like this, he muttered. Creating more shadow clones. Surround it and prepare Rasengans on my mark. The clones moved into position, but before they could act, tentacles of dark energy lashed out from the rift. One caught a clone, disintegrating it instantly. Another struck the water, flash boiling it into steam. Fall back. Naruto ordered the remaining clones, but it was too late. The rift seemed to inhale, creating a vacuum that pulled everything toward it with irresistible force. Water, debris, and Naruto's clones were sucked in, disappearing into the darkness. Naruto himself channeled chakra to his feet, anchoring himself to the bedrock beneath the lake, but the pull intensified. Kit, if that thing is a dimensional tear, Kurama began. I know, Naruto gritted out, forming a Rasengan in one hand. But destroying it might make things worse. The bedrock beneath his feet began to crack from the strain. Naruto made a split-second decision, dismissing the Rasengan and instead entering his Nine Tails chakra mode. Golden energy engulfed him as he extended chakra arms toward the statues on either side of the valley, desperately seeking additional anchors. For a moment, it seemed to work. Then the rift pulsed once more, expanding dramatically, and the pull became overwhelming. The chakra arms stretched, thinned, and finally snapped. Damn it! Naruto shouted as he was yanked off his feet and hurled toward the darkness. Brace yourself, was all Kurama could say before they were swallowed by the void. The sensation was indescribable, like being simultaneously compressed to the size of an atom and stretched across infinite distance. Naruto couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't even scream as reality itself seemed to fold around him. Colors he had no names for flashed before his eyes. Sounds that couldn't exist assaulted his ears. The only constant was Kurama's presence, a familiar anchor in a sea of impossible sensations. And then, abruptly, it ended. Naruto crashed onto a hard surface, the impact driving the air from his lungs. He lay there for several seconds, fighting nausea and disorientation. When he finally managed to open his eyes, he found himself staring up at a sky that was decidedly not the one he knew. Purple-tinged clouds swirled in unnatural patterns across a copper-colored sky. 3 small moons, or were they planets, hung at impossible angles to each other. The air tasted metallic and smelled faintly of burnt sugar. Kurama, Naruto whispered, pushing himself to his knees. I'm here, the fox replied, sounding equally disoriented. But I don't think we are where we should be. Ya think? Naruto muttered, taking in his surroundings with growing astonishment. He stood on what appeared to be a floating platform of black stone veined with glowing blue material. Similar platforms of varying sizes hovered at different heights as far as he could see, connected by bridges of light that shimmered in and out of existence. In the far distance, what looked like fragments of different landscapes, a piece of desert here, a segment of ocean there, a chunk of forest suspended upside down, floated in the void. Genjutsu, Naruto suggested hopefully. No, Kurama replied grimly. This is real. We've been pulled into another dimension. Before Naruto could process this, the sound of battle reached his ears, metallic clangs, energy blasts, and a woman's defiant shout. Following the noise, he ran to the edge of his platform and spotted the conflict on a larger structure below. A slender woman in yellow and black armor was fighting against a dozen humanoid creatures. Her movements were fluid and practiced, each kick and punch delivered with precision. A yellow helmet concealed her features, its design reminiscent of some prehistoric bird. She fought well, but was clearly outnumbered. Her opponents were unlike anything Naruto had ever seen. Gray-skinned with bulbous black eyes and elongated limbs. They moved with unnatural jerking motions, as if their joints bent in all the wrong directions. They wielded curved blades that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. As Naruto watched, the woman executed a perfect spinning kick that sent one creature flying. Is that all you got? She taunted, her voice carrying clearly. I've fought mall security with more coordination. 3 attackers lunged simultaneously. She dodged 2 but the third caught her with a glancing blow across her side, drawing sparks from her armor. She staggered, momentarily vulnerable, as 4 more creatures closed in. Naruto didn't hesitate. He leapt from his platform, gathering chakra as he fell. Rasengan. The spiraling sphere of energy crashed into the ground between the woman and her attackers, sending the creatures tumbling backward in a shower of debris. Naruto landed in a defensive stance beside the yellow armored fighter. "Nice entrance," she remarked, breathing heavily. "Though I totally had that under control." "Sure looked like it," Naruto replied with a grin, sizing up their opponents as they regrouped. "Any idea what these things are?" "Shadow thralls," she answered, dropping into a fighting stance. "Foot soldiers for something much worse." "Who the hell are you, anyway?" "Naruto Uzumaki, shinobi of the Hidden Leaf Village," he replied, forming a familiar cross seal. "And I'm about to even these odds." Shadow clone jutsu. A dozen perfect copies of Naruto poofed into existence, surrounding the shadow thralls. The yellow fighter took an involuntary step backward. "Okay, that's new," she murmured. The thralls hissed in unison, a sound like steam escaping a pressurized valve. They moved with greater urgency now, attacking the clones with frenzied intensity. Each Naruto responded in kind, engaging with the taijutsu mastery that had made him legendary in his world. Fighting alongside his clones, the real Naruto noted how the creatures seemed to phase partially out of reality when struck, making follow-up blows difficult. "They're slippery. Hit them hard enough and they stay solid," the woman called back, demonstrating by channeling some kind of yellow energy into her fist before striking a thrall. The creature convulsed and dissolved into shadowy particles. Naruto nodded, understanding the principle immediately. He channeled Nine Tails chakra into his next strike, his fist glowing golden as it connected with a thrall's face. The result was spectacular. The creature didn't just dissolve but exploded in a shower of shadow fragments. "Now we're talking," Naruto grinned, directing his clones to follow suit. The battle quickly turned. Whatever advantage the shadow thralls had in their semi-corporeal nature was negated by chakra-enhanced attacks. Between Naruto's clones and the woman's skilled fighting, they made short work of the remaining creatures. As the last thrall dissolved, Naruto dismissed his clones and turned to his fighting partner. "So, you got a name. And what's with the outfit?" The yellow light surrounding the woman faded, her armor disappearing in a flash to reveal a young woman about his age with caramel-colored hair, warm brown eyes, and an expression that mixed wariness with curiosity. She wore casual Earth-style clothes, jeans, a yellow top, and a leather jacket. Kira Ford," she replied, studying him with narrowed eyes. "And I'm the Yellow Dino Thunder Power Ranger. Or was, until," she gestured at the bizarre landscape around them. "Until whatever this has happened. Your turn, Spiky. What's a shinobi, and how did you make those copies of yourself?" Naruto blinked, processing the unfamiliar terms. "Power Ranger. Never heard of it. I'm a ninja from the Hidden Leaf Village, and that was just a basic shadow clone technique." He glanced around. "So you don't know what this place is either?" Kira shook her head, folding her arms across her chest. "Best I can tell, it's some kind of dimensional crossroads. I was playing a gig, performing music, at a cafe in Reefside when this black hole thing appeared on stage. Next thing I know, I'm here fighting those creeps." "Same basic story," Naruto nodded. "I was investigating an energy disturbance and got sucked through a rift." "Kit," Kurama interrupted, "the natural energy here is strange. It feels both familiar and alien simultaneously. The girl, there's something about her energy signature that resonates with yours." Naruto frowned, focusing his senses on Kira. Now that Kurama mentioned it, there was something oddly complementary. Why about their chakra patterns, like two puzzle pieces from different sets that somehow still fit together? "What are you staring at?" Kira asked, her tone sharpening defensively. Before Naruto could respond, the ground beneath them trembled. Fractures appeared in the stone, glowing with the same oily rainbow sheen as the rift that had brought him here. "That can't be good," Naruto muttered. "We need to move," Kira agreed, already backing away. "This section is destabilizing." A shimmering bridge of light appeared, connecting their platform to another floating island nearby. Without discussion, they both ran for it, the stone crumbling behind them as they sprinted across the translucent path. They had almost reached safety when a section of the light bridge flickered and vanished directly under Kira's feet. She plummeted with a startled cry, disappearing into the void below. Naruto reacted instantly, extending a chakra arm that caught her wrist. With a powerful pull, he yanked her back up, catching her against his chest as she landed on solid ground beside him. For a moment, they stood frozen in that position, the unexpected contact surprising them both. Kira recovered first, stepping back with a bemused expression. Okay, the clones were impressive, but extendable glowing arms. That's just showing off. Naruto grinned, rubbing the back of his neck in a habitual gesture. Comes in handy sometimes. You okay? Yeah, thanks to you, she admitted, her expression softening slightly. Her eyes widened as she looked past him. But we're not done yet. Naruto turned to see what had caught her attention. At the center of their new platform, a column of darkness was forming, condensing into a humanoid shape. The temperature plummeted, frost forming on the stone beneath their feet as the figure solidified. What emerged resembled a knight crafted from shadow and ice. Midnight blue armor covered a tall, imposing form, with frost constantly forming and sublimating across its surface. A horned helmet concealed any face that might exist within, while a tattered cape of darkness billowed behind it despite the absence of wind. Ranger, the figure spoke, its voice like ice cracking in the dark. Lord Eclipse grows impatient. Surrender the grid access codes, and your death will be painless. Kira stepped forward, her stance defiant. I already told your boss. I don't have any codes. The grid chooses its champions, we don't control it. The knight turned its featureless helmet toward Naruto. And what have we here? Another champion from yet another reality. How inefficient of the grid to spread its power so thinly. I don't know what this grid is, Naruto replied, chakra already flowing through his system in preparation for combat. But I know a bad guy when I see one, and buddy. You're ticking all the boxes. A sound like shattered glass grinding together emerged from the night. Laughter, Naruto realized with a chill. I am Frost Wraith, herald of Lord Eclipse, the creature announced. And you are nothing but dimensional debris soon to be swept away. Without warning, it thrust one gauntleted hand forward. A blast of freezing energy shot toward them. So cold it made the air itself crystallize in its path. Naruto and Kira dove in opposite directions, the attack striking where they had stood and instantly transforming that section of stone into brittle ice that cracked and fell away into the void. Dino Thunder, power up! Kira shouted, pulling out a device that looked like a stylized bracelet. Yellow energy engulfed her, resolidify as the armored form Naruto had seen earlier. Not to be outdone, Naruto channeled his chakra, golden light erupting around him as he entered Ninetales chakra mode. The sudden power release created a shockwave that pushed back the freezing mist Frost Wraith was generating. That's different, Kira commented, staring at Naruto's transformed state with its glowing chakra shroud and black markings. Frost Wraith took a step backward, the first sign of uncertainty in its posture. Impossible. Those energy signatures cannot coexist in a single being. I get that a lot, Naruto replied with a fierce grin. Ready to find out what else is impossible, he launched forward, moving faster than most eyes could track. His fist, enhanced with concentrated chakra, struck Frost Wraith's chest place. Ate with enough force to shatter granite. The knight staggered backward but didn't fall, ice immediately reforming where the armor had cracked. Impressive, Frost Wraith hissed. But futile. Its counter attacked with a sweeping blade of ice that materialized from its arm. Naruto dodged, but the blade caught the edge of his chakra shroud. A numbing cold shot through him, momentarily disrupting his chakra flow. Its attacks affect our chakra directly, Kurama warned. Don't let it touch you. Working on it, Naruto replied aloud, leaping back to create distance. Kira seized the opening, somersaulting over Frost Wraith to deliver a powerful kick to its back. She followed with a series of strikes that drove the knight toward Naruto, who had recovered and prepared a Rasengan. But Frost Wraith adapted quickly. It plunged one hand into the stone beneath them, causing the entire platform to tilt sharply. Both fighters struggled for balance as frost spread across the surface in intricate fractal patterns. We need to end this fast, Kira called, her boots finding minimal traction on the increasingly slick surface. This whole place is becoming unstable. Naruto nodded, an idea forming. Can you create a distraction? One distraction coming up, Kira replied. She took a deep breath, then unleashed what Naruto could only describe as a weaponized scream. The sonic atta, CK struck Frost Wraith with visible concussive force, driving it to one knee and shattering pieces of its armor. The knight raised its arms defensively, ice forming a protective barrier against the sound waves. Naruto seized the moment, creating a shadow clone that immediately began helping him form a more complex jutsu. Wind chakra spiraled and compressed into his palm, creating an advanced form of Rasengan that emitted a high-pitched whine like 1,000 birds. "Rasenshuriken," he shouted, hurling the disc-shaped attack directly at the distracted knight. Frost Wraith looked up just in time to see the attack approaching. It attempted to reinforce its ice barrier, but too late. The Rasenshuriken struck, expanding into a vortex of microscopic wind blades that shredded everything within its radius. For a moment, Frost Wraith was suspended within the swirling sphere of destruction, its armor disintegrating as countless invisible blades severed atomic bonds. Then the jutsu collapsed inward before detonating with a thunderous boom. When the light faded, nothing remained of Frost Wraith except scattered ice crystals that quickly sublimated into mist. Naruto dropped to one knee, his chakra mode flickering. The Rasenshuriken always took a toll, especially in this strange environment where natural energy behaved differently. "That was," Kira began, her armor disappearing in another flash of yellow light. She looked both impressed and unnerved. "What exactly was that?" "Wind style. Rasenshuriken," Naruto explained between deep breaths. "Cuts at the cellular level. Not something I bust out for every fight." "No kidding," Kira muttered, helping him to his feet. "You okay?" "I will be," he assured her, feeling Kurama already working to restore their chakra balance. "The guy mentioned something called the grid. The same thing you were talking about earlier." Kira's expression grew serious. "The morphing grid. It's the source of ranger powers, a kind of energy field that connects all living things across dimensions. Think of it as a cosmic battery that certain people can tap into." "Sounds a bit like natural energy and chakra in my world," Naruto mused. Maybe that's why. He was interrupted by a strange sensation, like electricity running across his skin. Kira felt it too, judging by her startled expression. Between them, particles of light and shadow began to coalesce, swirling together in a yin-yang pattern. "What's happening?" Kira asked, taking a step back. Naruto couldn't answer. The swirling energies intensified, drawing something out of both of them. He felt Kurama's chakra responding, resonating with whatever was forming. Similarly, yellow energy flowed from Kira, merging with the phenomenon. The light solidified, compressing into a devi. Unlike anything Naruto had seen before, a bracer of sorts, designed to fit over the forearm. Its surface was polished silver with inlaid patterns that shifted between deepest black and brightest white, never settling on either. "Is that a morpher?" Kira whispered, staring at the object hovering between them. "But it's not like any I've seen before." "Kit," Kurama interjected urgently. "Hat thing is channeling both your sage chakra and something from the girl. Be careful." Before either could decide what to do, the device moved on its own, flying toward Naruto's wrist. On instinct, he raised his arm, and the bracer clasped itself around his forearm with a resonant click. Power surged through him, not just chakra, but something more primordial. It felt like entering Sage Mode A, ND9 Tails chakra mode simultaneously, but with an added dimension he couldn't quite comprehend. Knowledge flooded his mind, concepts and terms he'd never encountered. "The morphing grid," he murmured, understanding flowing through him. "Light and shadow aspects, balanced in the twilight." Kira approached cautiously, her eyes wide. "That's not possible. No one can access both light and shadow aspects of the grid. It would tear them apart." Naruto looked down at the device on his arm, then at his own body, which now emitted a soft silvery glow with undertones of orange. "Seems like the rules are different for me." As if responding to his acknowledgement, the bracer pulsed once. A holographic emblem appeared above it, a stylized design showing a fox mask bisected by light and shadow, with 9 tails forming a spiral pattern behind it. "The Twilight Sage Ranger," Naruto read from information suddenly present in his mind. "That's me." A completely new ranger designation, Kira breathed, reaching out to touch the hologram before thinking better of it. But how? New powers don't just appear out of nowhere. They're created with purpose, technology, intention. The ground shook again, more violently this time. Larger chunks of the platform began breaking away, falling into the bottomless void below. Whatever temporary stability they'd found was rapidly deteriorating. Questions later, Naruto decided. Grasping Kira's hand, we need to find shelter and figure out where exactly we are. Kira nodded, pointing to a larger landmass visible in the distance. Unlike the floating platforms, this one appeared to have structures built upon it, angular buildings that reflected the copper light of this realm's strange sky. That looks more stable, she suggested. And maybe inhabited. Naruto assessed the distance. Too far to jump, even with his enhanced abilities. Any ideas how to get there? A half smile curved Kira's lips. Maybe it's time to see what your new accessory can do. Naruto looked down at the bracer, instinctively knowing she was right. The knowledge implanted with its bonding suggested capabilities far beyond what he currently understood. Still, the basics seemed straightforward enough. He raised his arm, the bracer glowing in response to his intention. Twilight Sage Power, activate. Energy exploded around him, light and shadow intertwining, in a double helix that engulfed his form. When it cleared, Naruto stood transformed. His armor gleamed silver and orange with black accents, form-fitting yet allowing full range of motion. A helmet concealed his features, its visor shaped like a fox's visage, while behind him, a cloak-like projection of energy billowed, resembling 9 tails of light and shadow. Okay, Kira said after a moment of stunned silence. That's actually pretty badass. Naruto examined his transformed state, feeling the power coursing through him. It was different from chakra mode, more focused, more directed, yet still fundamentally connected to his essence as a shinobi and sage. Let's see what this can do, he said, his voice slightly altered by the helmet's systems. Instinctively, he extended his hand toward the distant structure. Twilight pathway. Energy streamed from his palm, stretching across the void to form a bridge of solid light and shadow particles. Unlike the shimmering, unstable paths they'd seen earlier, this one pulsed with steady power. Nice trick, Kira commented, cautiously testing the bridge with one foot. Finding it solid, she gave an approving nod. Shall we? Before Naruto could respond, a massive tremor shook the entire realm. In the distance, massive rifts began tearing open in the copper sky, revealing glimpses of other worlds beyond. A city skyline here, a mountain range there, an ocean vista elsewhere. Something big is happening, Naruto observed, the helmet's systems automatically enhancing his vision to track the disturbances. The barriers between dimensions are weakening. Lord Eclipse, Kira said grimly. That's his endgame, to break down all barriers and consume every reality. Frost Wraith was just a scout. The platform beneath them gave a final shudder before beginning to disintegrate completely. Without further discussion, they sprinted across Naruto's energy bridge, racing toward the larger landmass as their previous position crumbled into nothingness behind them. They were halfway across when a shadow fell over them. Looking up, Naruto saw a massive shape moving through the void above, a vessel of some kind, its hull black as night with pulsing veins of purple energy running along its surface. Its design defied conventional physics, sections folding inward at impossible angles while others extended into dimensions that hurt to look at directly. Eclipse's flagship, Kira breathed, her pace faltering momentarily. The Void Harvester. If that's here, keep moving, Naruto urged, placing a steadying hand on her back. One problem at a time. They reached the far side just as the last of Naruto's energy bridge dissipated. This new territory felt more substantial, the ground didn't shift beneath their feet, and the structure showed signs of deliberate construction rather than random formation. The buildings resembled a cross between ancient temples and futuristic architecture, with spiraling towers and arched doorways. Inscribed with symbols from a dozen different writing systems, some of which Naruto recognized and others completely alien. The central structure dominated the landscape, a massive domed building with a spire that stretched upward until it vanished into the copper clouds above. The Nexus Sanctum, Kira identified it, a note of relief in her voice. I've heard stories, but never thought I'd see it. If anywhere has answers, it's there. Quote, Naruto's helmet retracted, folding seamlessly into the collar of his armor to reveal his face. You seem to know more about this place than you initially let on, he observed. No accusation in his tone, merely curiosity. Kira had the grace to look slightly abashed. When you've been a ranger, you hear things, dimensional theory, multiverse hypotheses. The morphing grid connects all realities where rangers exist. But this, she gestured at the sanctum. This is the theoretical center point, where all dimensions connect. I thought it was just a legend. And this Lord Eclipse? Naruto asked as they approached the massive structure. A being of pure anti-grid energy, according to the stories, Kira explained, her expression darkening. He consumes dimensions, adding their unique energies to his own. My mentor Drive, Tommy Oliver theorized that such a being could exist as a counterbalance to the grid itself, but we never thought. She trailed off, lost in painful memories. Your team, Naruto guessed softly. They didn't make it here with you, did they? Kira's jaw tightened. Eclipse attacked our dimension 6 months ago. Connor, Ethan, Trent, Drive. Oh. They held the line while I tried to reach other ranger teams for backup. There was a surge of energy, a rift opened, and I was pulled through. I never saw what happened to them after that. Naruto placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. I'm sorry. I know what it's like to lose teammates, to be separated from everyone you know. For a moment, vulnerability showed through Kira's tough exterior. Then she squared her shoulders. Which is why we need answers. If there's any chance they're alive, if there's any way to stop Eclipse and get back to our dimensions, we'll find it in there. They reached the enormous doors of the sanctum, which were carved with intricate scenes depicting what appeared to be different versions of rangers throughout history and across dimensions. Naruto recognized none of them. But Kira's fingers traced certain figures with reverent familiarity. The original team, she murmured, pointing to one section. The Zeo Rangers. Time Force. Wild Force. So many teams, so many dimensions. Naruto examined a different section, where the carvings showed figures manipulating elemental forces that resembled ninjutsu. These look like shinobi from my world. The grid manifests differently across dimensions, Kira explained. In my world, it's accessed through technology and dinosaur DNA. In others, it might connect to magic, cosmic forces, or... She glanced at Naruto's morpher. Or chakra, apparently. The massive doors had no visible handles or locks. Naruto was considering how they might open them when his morpher pulsed with energy. The symbols on the door illuminated in response. And with a low grinding sound, the enormous portal began to swing inward. Guests were expected, Naruto commented, exchanging a cautious look with Kira. Your new accessory has universal access. She replied, eyeing the bracer with renewed interest. The Twilight Sage Ranger, still trying to wrap my head around that concept. They stepped into the sanctum. And both gasped involuntarily at the sight that greeted them. The interior was vastly larger than the exterior suggested, a physical impossibility that Naruto had long since stopped questioning in this place. The domed ceiling arched hundreds of feet above, depicting a map of what could only be the multiverse itself, countless galaxies and dimensions represented in moving light displays. The floor was a massive circular platform with concentric rings of different materials, stone, crystal, metal, and substances Naruto couldn't identify. Each ring rotated independently, creating a slowly shifting mandala pattern. At the center stood a column of pure energy that stretched from floor to ceiling, blindingly bright at its core, yet wreathed in shadow at its edges. The Nexus column, Kira whispered, her voice filled with awe. The physical manifestation of the morphing grid in this dimension. The stories were true. Naruto started forward, but Kira caught his arm, stopping him. Wait, we're not alone. From the shadows surrounding the column, a figure emerged, humanoid but clearly not human. Tall and slender, with skin like polished silver and eyes that contained swirling galaxies. The being moved with liquid grace toward them. It wore robes that seemed woven from starlight itself, constantly shifting in pattern and hue. The Twilight Sage arrives, the being spoke, its Voic, resonating on multiple frequencies simultaneously. Earlier than foretold, yet precisely when needed. Naruto and Kira exchanged glances. You know who I am? Naruto asked cautiously. I know what you are becoming. The figure corrected, gesturing toward Naruto's morpher. I am the Archivist, keeper of the Nexus Sanctum and recorder of all grid manifestations across the multiverse. And you, Naruto Uzumaki, are an impossibility made flesh. I get that a lot too, Naruto replied with a hint of his characteristic humor. Mind explaining what exactly that means in this context? The archivist's galactic eyes studied him intently. The morphing grid exists in two fundamental aspects, light and shadow. All rangers draw from one aspect or the other, their affinity determined by their essential nature. Never has a single being channeled both simultaneously. Until now, Kira added, looking at Naruto with renewed curiosity. Indeed, the archivist nodded. In your native dimension, Naruto Uzumaki, you already contained a duality few could sustain, the chakra of the nine-tailed beast balanced with your own life force. Your mastery of sage arts further demonstrated your capacity to harmonize opposing energies. So I was compatible with this twilight power? Naruto asked, beginning to understand. More than compatible, the archivist corrected. You were the template upon which the prophecy was built. The Twilight Sage Ranger, a warrior who balances light and shadow, life and death, creation and destruction. The multiverse has been waiting for you, Naruto Uzumaki, though Then I did not expect you would arrive in the company of a Dino Thunder Ranger. Kira crossed her arms defensively. What's that supposed to mean? The archivist's expression shifted in what might have been amusement. Merely that the prophecy mentioned allies from across dimensions, but specifics were lacking. A tremor ran through the sanctum, causing the concentric rings to briefly fall out of synchronization. The archivist's expression grew troubled. Lord Eclipse's forces grow stronger by the moment, the being stated. The consumption of dimensions accelerates. Even this nexus, CH exists at the crossroads of all realities, cannot withstand his assault indefinitely. Then tell us how to stop him, Naruto insisted. This morpher, this twilight power, it appeared for a reason, right? The archivist approached the central column, waving one elongated hand through the energy field. Images formed within. Planets, stars, entire galaxies winking out like candles extinguished by a cold wind. Lord Eclipse was once like you, the archivist revealed. A being capable of channeling both aspects of the grid. But where you seek balance, he sought dominance. The shadow consumed him, and he became a void that can never be filled. Each dimension he devours only increases his hunger. How do we defeat something like that? Kira asked, the weight of the task settling on her shoulders. Alone, you cannot, the archivist stated bluntly, but together, with others who carry fragments of the grid's power across dimensions, there may be a chance. The being gestured again, and the energy column's projection changed to show different figures, warriors from various worlds, each connected to the morphing grid in their own way. These are the champions I have identified, the archivist continued. Each possesses knowledge, abilities, or connections vital to confronting Lord Eclipse. You must find them, unite them, and forge an alliance strong enough to challenge the void. Naruto studied the projections intently, committing each face to memory. Among them, he noticed a woman with platinum blonde hair and powers over ice, a dark-haired woman wielding shadow abilities, and several others with distinctive appearances and apparent abilities. How do we find them? He asked. This multiverse seems pretty vast. In answer, his morpher glowed. A holographic display appeared above it, showing a navigational interface of sorts. The Twilight Morpher can create pathways between dimensions, the archivist explained. It will guide you to each champion, though reaching them may not always be simple. Lord Eclipse's forces will sense the Morpher's energy and seek to intercept you. So we're on a multidimensional scavenger hunt for allies while being hunted by the big bad's minions. Kira summarized with grim humor. Sounds like Tuesday for a Power Ranger. Another, stronger tremor shook the sanctum. This time, cracks appeared in the massive dome above, and the energy column flickered alarmingly. You must go, the archivist urged, genuine concern in its otherworldly voice. The sanctum's defenses weaken, and Lord Eclipse approaches. I will remain to guard the Nexus as long as possible. But you must begin your quest immediately. Wait, Naruto protested. There's still so much we don't understand. Understanding will come with experience, the archivist replied cryptically. Trust in the power that has chosen you, Twilight Sage. Trust in the allies you will gather. Trust in the balance you embody. The being raised both arms, and the concentric rings of the floor began spinning more rapidly. Energy crackled between them, forming a swirling vortex centered on where Naruto and Kira stood. The first champion awaits in a realm of eternal winter. The archivist called over the rising hum of energy. Seek the queen who controls ice but fears her own heart. Her power resonates with the light aspect of the grid, and her counsel will be invaluable. A name would be helpful. Kira shouted as the vortex intensified around them. Queen Elsa of Arendelle, came the reply, the archivist's form already growing indistinct as the portal energy enveloped them. Remember, balance is key. Light cannot exist without shadow, but shadow must never be allowed to consume light. The vortex closed around them, and once again Naruto experienced the disorienting sensation of dimensional travel. This time, however, the Twilight Morpher provided a buffer of sorts, its energy surrounding them in a protective cocoon that made the journey less traumatic. His last glimpse of the Nexus Sanctum showed the massive doors bursting inward, and a towering figure wreathed in darkness entering. The archivist turned to face the intruder, the column of energy pulsing in response to the threat. Then the portal closed completely, and they were hurled toward their next destination. The sensation of extreme cold was Naruto's first awareness as the dimensional tunnel began to dissipate. Swirling snow replaced the kaleidoscope of interdimensional energies, and gravity reasserted itself with abrupt finality. He and Kira tumbled onto a snow-covered mountainside, the portal snapping shut behind them with a sound like thunder. Arctic wind immediately cut through their clothing, a stark contrast to the temperate environment of the Nexus. "Sea cold," Kira stammered, wrapping her arms around herself as she struggled to her feet in the knee-deep snow. "Really sea cold." Naruto was already scanning their surroundings, taking in the jagged mountain peaks and the distant fjord visible far below. Near the water's edge, a small city huddled, its buildings dusted with snow but showing signs of habitation. "That must be Arendelle," he noted, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "But where's this ice queen we're supposed to find?" As if in answer, a massive structure caught his eye, a palace made entirely of ice, jutting from the mountainside above them. Sunlight refracted through its crystalline walls, casting rainbow patterns across the snow. "I'm guessing the ice palace might be a good start," Kira remarked dryly, following his gaze. "Just a hunch." Naruto grinned, already formulating a plan. "Race you there." Before Kira could respond, a howl echoed across the mountainside, inhuman and chilling in more than just temperature. It was answered by several more, forming a chorus of predatory intent that seemed to come from all directions. "We've got company," Naruto warned, dropping into a defensive stance as dark shapes became visible through the swirling snow. "Looks like Eclipse found us already." The creatures that emerged resembled wolves, but constructed from living shadow and ice. Their eyes glowed with unnatural purple light, and frost formed with each breath from jaws lined with crystalline fangs. Frost wolves, Kira identified them, reaching for her Dino Morpher. Eclipse's trackers. They hunt rangers across dimensions. As the wolf pack closed in, Naruto and Kira stood back to back, ready to defend themselves in this strange new dimension. The Twilight Morpher pulsed on Naruto's wrist, responding to the imminent threat. While in the ice palace above, a solitary figure sensed the disturbance and prepared to investigate. Their quest had only just begun. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, Fractured Reflections. Purple light glinted off crystalline fangs. The lead frost wolf's breath materialized as jagged ice crystals suspended momentarily in the frigid air. Time seemed to slow as Naruto assessed their situation. 7 shadow ice predators circling, the distant ice palace their destination, and Kira trembling slightly beside him, though whether from cold or tension remained unclear. Think, adapt, overcome. 3 words Kakashi-sensei had drilled into him since his genin days. "Kira," Naruto whispered without taking his eyes off the approaching threats, "on my signal, morph and head straight for the ice palace. I'll cover you." She shot him a sidelong glance. "And leave you to fight these things alone." "Not happening, Spiky. Trust me." His voice carried a quiet confidence born from years of impossible victories. "I'm never really fighting alone." Before she could question his meaning, Naruto formed his signature hand seal. Shadow Clone Jutsu. The mountainside erupted in smoke plumes, revealing 24 identical Narutos surrounding the wolf pack. Each clone grinned with the same determined expression, shifting into varied combat stances. The alpha wolf hesitated, luminous eyes darting between identical targets. Now, original Naruto commanded. Dino Thunder, power up. Kira activated her morpher in a flash of yellow energy that momentarily outshone the snow's reflective brilliance. The transformation complete, she leapt upward with Ranger-enhanced agility, bounding toward the Ice Palace. The wolf pack snarled in unison, three breaking formation to pursue her while the others lunged at Naruto's clones. Oh no you don't. Several Narutos intercepted the pursuers with flying tackles, while others engaged the remaining predators. The battle erupted across the snowy landscape. Unlike conventional enemies, these creatures partially dissolved into shadow when struck, only to reconstitute moments later. They learned quickly, those fangs proving capable of dispelling shadow clones with a single bite. These things are smarter than they look, Naruto muttered as another clone disappeared in a puff of smoke, transferring its brief combat experience to him. He ducked beneath slashing claws, retaliating with a chakra-enhanced uppercut that sent one wolf tumbling through the air. Their composition resembles the frost wraiths, Kurama observed. Concentrated attacks might disrupt them more effectively. Naruto nodded, already formulating a strategy as he backed toward a rock formation. Three wolves approached, moving with coordinated precision. Hat reminded him uncomfortably of ninja hounds. Let's try something new. Naruto raised his arm, the Twilight morpher gleaming against the snow. Twilight Sage power, activate. The transformation washed over him, armor materializing in a fusion of light and shadow. The wolves recoiled momentarily, sensing the dual-natured energy that contradicted their shadow-based existence. Twilight Blade, Naruto called, instinctively accessing his new arsenal. Light coalesced in his right hand, darkness in his left. The energies spiraled together, forming a double helix sword that hummed with power. Unlike the raw, uncontrolled nature of his Rasengan variants, this weapon channeled energy with precise focus. The lead wolf recovered from its hesitation and pounced. Naruto sidestepped with enhanced speed, the blade cleaving through the creature's midsection in a single fluid motion. Unlike previous attacks, the wolf didn't reform. Instead, it shattered like glass, fragments dissolving into motes of light and shadow that scattered across the snow. That's more like it. Naruto grinned behind his helmet, shifting his stance to face the remaining predators. Who's next? The wolves. Behavior changed instantly. Recognizing a superior threat, they backed away, growling, before melting into the snow like spilled ink. Naruto remained vigilant for several heartbeats before relaxing slightly. Cowards. Strategic retreat, Kurama corrected. They're reporting back to their master. Which means we don't have much time. Naruto dismissed the blade, watching it dissolve into particles of light and shadow. Let's catch up with Kira. He bounded up the mountainside, each leap covering impossible distance. The armor enhanced his already formidable abilities, allowing him to practically fly over the snowy terrain. Within minutes, he spotted Yellow Ranger moving steadily toward the Ice Palace, no pursuers in sight. Need a lift, Naruto called, landing beside her with Enig. Forced to create a small crater in the snow. Kira's helmet turned toward him. Show off. Though the helmet distorted her voice, the begrudging amusement came through clearly. How'd you handle the wolves? They didn't appreciate my new sword. Naruto gestured toward the palace looming above them. No sign of trouble up there, but we should hurry. Those wolves were just scouts. Agreed. Kira's posture shifted, more serious. I've seen how Eclipse operates. First come scouts, then hunters, then. She shook her head. Let's just say we don't want to meet what comes after hunters. Queen Elsa stood motionless before the balcony doors, one pale hand pressed against the ice she'd conjured years ago during her self-imposed exile. The structure had become something of a personal retreat, a place to practice her powers without fear of harming others, a sanctuary when royal duties in Arendelle became overwhelming. Today, however, something had disturbed her sanctuary's peace. Strange energies, she murmured. Frost patterns forming unconsciously beneath her fingertips. Not like mine, something older, wilder. Through the crystalline walls, she observed two figures nding toward her palace, one in gleaming silver-orange armor, the other in yellow. Neither moved like her royal guards or like the occasional adventurers who sometimes attempted to reach her private retreat. They moved like warriors. With a decisive gesture, Elsa conjured a series of ice mirrors throughout the palace, allowing her to observe the intruders from multiple angles while remaining in the throne room. Another subtle movement of her fingers strengthened the palace's structure, ice walls thickening and hardening into something approaching diamond density. "If they seek audience with Arendel's queen," she said to the empty chamber, her voice carrying the quiet authority that had cowed diplomats from kingdoms thrice Arendel's size, "they will find her prepared." The moss-sieved doors of the ice palace loomed before them, intricate frost patterns etched across their translucent surface. Kira placed a gloved hand against the material, whistling softly. "This isn't normal ice," she observed. "The molecular structure is different. More ordered." Naruto's helmet retracted, exposing his face to the biting cold. "You can tell that just by touching it. Science nerd before I was a ranger," Kira explained with a shrug. "Some habits stick." Before Naruto could respond, the doors swung open silently, revealing a spectacular interior. A grand staircase of perfectly clear ice dominated the entrance hall, splitting into two curved staircases that led to upper levels. Everything, from the vaulted ceiling to the ornate chandelier, consisted of ice in various opacities, creating an environment that should have felt frigid but instead radiated serene beauty. "I guess that's an invitation," Naruto remarked, stepping cautiously into the palace. Kira followed, her Moore's boots making soft clicking sounds against the ice floor. "Pretty sure it's called walking into the possibly hostile Ice Queen's territory, but sure, let's call it an invitation." Their voices echoed slightly in the cavernous space. As the doors closed behind them, with no visible mechanism controlling their movement, Naruto felt a distinct shift in the atmosphere. The temperature didn't change, but pressure did, as if the very air had become more attentive. "We're being watched," he whispered, years of shinobi training triggering subtle alertness. Kira nodded almost imperceptibly. "Multiple angles. Those ice formations on the walls aren't just decorative." They proceeded toward the staircase, maintaining casual postures while remaining combat-ready. Halfway across the entrance hall, a voice rang out, clear and commanding, with underlying tension beneath the controlled exterior. "That's far enough." At the top of the staircase stood a woman unlike any Naruto had encountered. Tall and slender, with platinum blonde hair arranged in an elaborate braid, she wore a gown that seemed crafted from ice crystals and snowflakes. Her posture exuded regal confidence, but her eyes, piercing blue like a winter sky, revealed caution and something deeper, loneliness, perhaps. "Queen Elsa of Arendelle, I presume," Naruto called up, offering a slight bow that balanced respect without subservience. Surprise flickered across her features before the composed mask returned. "You have me at a disadvantage. You know my name, yet I know nothing of armored strangers who fight shadow wolves on my mountain." "The wolves weren't exactly our idea," Kira responded, her helmet retracting to reveal her face as a gesture of good faith. "We're here looking for you, actually." Frost gathered around Elsa's fingertips, a subtle warning. "Many have looked for me over the years. Suitors seeking political alliances, mercenaries hoping to capture the Ice Witch, curious adventurers wanting to witness magic firsthand." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Which category do you fall into?" "None of them," Naruto replied honestly. "We're here because your world is in danger, and we need your help." A soft, humorless laugh escaped the queen. "My world has been in danger since the day I was born with these powers." Small ice crystals materialized around her, spinning slowly. "You'll need to be more specific." Kira stepped forward. "Have you noticed anything strange recently? Anomalies in weather patterns, reports of shadow creatures, unexplainable phenomena?" Something in Elsa's expression shifted. Recognition, concern, quickly masked by diplomatic neutrality. "Perhaps we should discuss this more comfortably." She gestured, and ice furniture materialized in what appeared to be a reception room adjoining the main hall. "Please, join me." As they followed her, Naruto whispered to Kira, "Not exactly the warm welcome I expected." "From the Ice Queen," Kira whispered back, "consider yourself lucky she didn't turn us into popsicles on sight." The conversation paused as they entered the side chamber where elegant ice chairs surrounded a low table. Unlike the entrance hall's clear ice, these furnishings had an opaque, almost velvet-like appearance that promised more comfort than seemed possible from frozen water. "Your palace is amazing," Naruto commented genuinely as they sat. Did you create all this yourself? Pride briefly illuminated Elsa's features. Yes, in a single night, actually, during what my sister calls my dramatic exit phase. She settled gracefully opposite them. Now, please explain why armored warriors from another dimension believe my world needs saving. Naruto and Kira exchanged startled glances. How did you? Kira began. Know you're from another dimension. Elsa finished. One elegant eyebrow arched. I may rule a small kingdom, but I'm well educated. Your armor bears no resemblance to any known metallurgical techniques. Your weapons and abilities defy natural law as understood by our finest scientists. And, she gestured toward the window where snowflakes hovered, suspended unnaturally. The very fabric of reality has been strained for weeks now. I can feel it in my connection to ice and snow. You're taking this surprisingly well, Naruto observed. A ghost of a smile touched Elsa's lips. When you can create living snowmen and manipulate ice at will, your definition of impossible becomes rather flexible. The smile faded as quickly as it appeared. But that doesn't mean I trust you. Why should I believe anything you say? Naruto considered his response carefully. This woman was clearly intelligent, perceptive, and powerful in her own right. Exaggeration or condescension would backfire immediately. Because we're not asking you to believe, he said finally. We're asking you to observe. He raised his arm, the Twilight morpher gleaming against the ice chamber's blue-white light. With a thought, he projected the holographic display the archivist had shown them, images of dimensions being consumed by shadow, the void harvester advancing through realities. Elsa's composed expression faltered as she watched entire worlds disappear. What is this? Lord Eclipse, Kira explained, her voice tight with personal hatred. A being that consumes dimensions. He's working his way through the multiverse, and according to our information, your world is on his list. And you two are going to stop this interdimensional entity. Skepticism colored Elsa's tone. Not alone, Naruto replied. That's why we're here. The archivist, a keeper of multiversal knowledge, directed us to find you and others like you. Champions who can help us defeat Eclipse. Me. Genuine surprise replaced Elsa's diplomatic reserve. I'm a queen with unusual abilities, not whatever you two are. I'm a shinobi, a ninja, from a world where chakra allows people to manipulate elements and energy, Naruto explained. And I'm a Power Ranger, Kira added. Part of a legacy of warriors who protect worlds from threats too powerful for conventional forces. And you? Naruto asked gently. A queen who creates living ice and senses disturbances in reality. That sounds like exactly the kind of champion we need. Elsa rose, pacing toward the window. Outside, the sun had begun to set, painting the snow-covered mountains in deepening shades of purple and blue. For several moments, she stood in silence, fingers absently tracing patterns in frost on the windowpane. 3 villages in Arendel's northern territories have reported shadow creatures attacking at night, she finally said, still facing the window. Last week, a section of forest simply vanished. Not destroyed, disappeared, leaving perfectly circular voids in the landscape. She turned back to them, eyes troubled. I've sent guards, investigators, even ventured myself to one location. There was nothing to fight, nothing to study, just absence where something should be. The early stages of dimensional consumption, Kira confirmed grimly. It starts at the edges, reality thinning in isolated locations before the main incursion. Elsa's regal poise reasserted itself. If what you say is true, and my kingdom is threatened by this Lord Eclipse, then of course I will help. But I need to understand what exactly you're proposing. I have responsibilities to my people. I cannot simply abandon Arendelle to chase shadows across dimensions. Before either could respond, the palace trembled, a subtle vibration that quickly intensified. Fine cracks appeared in the ice walls, spreading like lightning branches across the perfect surfaces. Something's coming, Naruto warned, armor reforming around his face as he stood. Elsa's expression hardened, ice gathering around her hands in swirling patterns. No one attacks my palace. The 3 rushed back to the main hall just as the enormous doors blasted inward, shards of ice exploding across the entrance. Through the settling crystalline dust, a figure emerged that made Naruto's blood freeze colder than any ice palace could. Orochimaru, he breathed. The figure resembled the snake Sannin. Naruto knew all too well. The corpse-pale skin, the long black hair, the predatory yellow eyes. But this version was wrong. Shadows seemed to leak from him like smoke, his movements leaving afterimages of darkness. Purple markings like bruised veins spread across his visible skin, and when he smiled, his teeth appeared jagged and obsidian black. Naruto-kun, the apparition greeted, his voice same unsettling silken tone Naruto remembered, but with an echo that seemed to repeat in impossible directions. How fascinating to find you here. Different dimension, yet still interfering with my plans. You know him? Kira asked, never taking her eyes off the intruder. Version of him from my world, Naruto replied tersely. Dangerous scientist, snake summoner, body stealer, all-around creep. My reputation precedes me, Shadow Orochimaru chuckled. Though I assure you, I've transcended the limitations of the Orochimaru you knew. Shadow Sage mode offers so many possibilities. He raised one hand, and darkness pooled in his palm, solidifying into a blade that absorbed light rather than reflected it. With his other hand, he made a gesture that sent 3 shadow serpents slithering across the ice toward them. Elsa reacted first, stamping her foot against the floor. A wave of ice spikes erupted in sequence, impaling the shadow snakes and momentarily halting their advance. The creatures hissed, dissolving around the ice only to reform seconds later. Physical attacks won't stop them, Naruto warned, summoning his Twilight blade. They're shadow constructs. Then perhaps light will prove more effective. Elsa responded, a determined gleam in her eyes. She swept her arms in a graceful arc, and the ice palace's crystalline structure refracted the fading daylight into concentrated beams that struck the shadow snakes. Where the focused light touched, the creatures writhed and smoked, parts of their forms disintegrating. Impressive adaptation, Shadow Orochimaru observed with clinical interest. Lord Eclipse will find your abilities most useful once you've been converted. Not happening, Kira declared, producing her Terra grips, twin yellow daggers that hummed with energy. No one's converting anyone, she charged, moving with the enhanced speed her ranger form provided. Shadow Orochimaru parried her initial strikes with casual ease, his blade meeting daggers with sounds like tearing fabric rather than clashing metal. Naruto flanked, Twilight blade trailing energy as he attacked from the opposite side. Working in unison with Kira, he pressed the advantage of numbers, forcing Orochimaru to divide his attention. For her part, Elsa maintained distance, strategically creating ice structures that either impeded Orochimaru's movement or enhanced Naruto and Kira's maneuverability. With subtle gestures, she formed ice ramps that allowed Kira to launch aerial attacks and slick patches that made Orochimaru's footing treacherous. Fascinating teamwork, Shadow Orochimaru commented, sounding genuinely pleased despite being pressured. 3 different power systems working in concert. The Shadow Sage in me appreciates such adaptation. His form suddenly liquefied into pure shadow, slipping between Naruto and Kira to reform behind Elsa. Before she could turn, his shadow blade pressed against her throat. The queen will come with me, he announced. Lord Eclipse has particular interest in ice manipulation abilities. Naruto and Kira froze, weapons ready but unwilling to risk Elsa's safety. You've miscalculated, Elsa said calmly, no. Fear in her voice despite the blade at her throat. Oh. Amusement colored Orochimaru's tone. This is my palace, she continued. Every molecule of ice answers to me alone. Without visible movement from Elsa, the floor beneath Orochimaru transformed, ice spikes shooting upward through his shadow form. Simultaneously, the ceiling above him collapsed in precisely calculated chunks. Caught by surprise, his concentration broke. Shadow form destabilizing momentarily. Enough for Elsa to slip away in a swirl of ice crystals, reforming several meters distant. Now, she shouted. Naruto didn't hesitate. Twilight style. Solar flare. His armor channeled light aspect energy, building to blinding intensity before releasing a concentrated beam that struck Orochimaru's still materializing form. The Shadow Sage hissed in genuine pain, parts of his shadowy body burning away under the assault. Kira followed immediately. Terra scream. Her sonic attack hit at the molecular level, disrupting the shadow particles trying to reconstitute. The combined assault drove Orochimaru back toward the shattered entrance, his form becoming increasingly unstable. Enough! Shadow Orochimaru snarled. Ge. Newing anger replacing his usual composure. He slammed one palm against the floor, and reality itself seemed to crack. A jagged black line split the ice, widening into a portal similar to the one that had originally brought Naruto to the Nexus dimension. "You've won nothing," Orochimaru spat as his body began sinking into the rift. "Lord Eclipse already knows of your quest. The Dimensional Archive, ISTS, will never share their knowledge with you now." "Dimensional Archives?" Kira questioned, stepping forward despite the dangerous energies crackling from the portal. Orochimaru's smile returned, cruel and knowing. "Did your precious archivist not mention them? The repositories of all multiversal knowledge. How unfortunate that Eclipse's forces now control the nearest one." The rift began closing around him, his form already half submerged in darkness. With a final mocking bow, he addressed Elsa directly. "Your Majesty, you might ask your new friends what happens to dimensions whose champions abandon them." Most educational. Then he was gone, the portal snapping shut with a thunderclap that shook loose ice crystals from the ceiling. Silence fell, broken only by the soft tinkling of falling ice shards. Elsa surveyed her damaged palace with a mixture of anger and resignation before turning to her unexpected visitors. "I believe," she said with remarkable composure, "that you have significantly more explaining to do." Repairs to the ice palace progressed with astonishing speed. Elsa moved through the structure with graceful efficiency, restoring damaged sections with mere gestures. Ice flowed like water under her command, rebuilding walls, reforming shattered ornaments, and eventually sealing the entrance with new doors more elaborate than their predecessors. "That's an impressive power," Naruto commented, watching as she restored the chandelier with intricate detail. "It has its uses," Elsa replied, her tone suggesting volumes of unspoken history. She compel, ETED the final adjustments before facing them fully. "Now, explain what that shadow version of your enemy meant about dimensional archives. And don't omit details this time." They settled once more in the side chamber, which Elsa had enhanced with additional ice furniture and softly glowing ice lanterns that cast warm light despite their frozen composition. "Honestly, the archivist didn't tell us about any archives," Kira admitted, running a hand through her hair in frustration. "Our briefing was more along the lines of, find these champions before everything gets consumed by darkness." "The archivist mentioned you specifically," Naruto added, addressing Elsa. "Said your ice powers resonated with the light aspect of the morphing grid." "The morphing grid?" Elsa questioned. "Think of it as an energy field that connects all living things across dimensions," Kira explained. "In my world, we access it through technology to become rangers. In other worlds, it manifests differently: magic, elemental powers, enhanced abilities." Understanding dawned in Elsa's eyes. "My ice manipulation." "Exactly," Kira confirmed. "The grid has two primary aspects, light and shadow. Most beings align naturally with one or the other." "Except him," Elsa noted, gesturing toward Naruto. "Yeah, I'm complicated," Naruto acknowledged with a slight grin. "In my world, I'm a Jinchuriki, human Kontai. NER for a powerful being called the Nine-Tailed Fox. I'm also a sage, which means I can channel natural energy from my surroundings. Apparently, that dual nature makes me compatible with both aspects of the grid." Elsa absorbed this information with remarkable equanimity. "And this Twilight Sage power you now possess, it's significant because it shouldn't be possible," Kira interjected. "Light and shadow aspects naturally repel each other. Trying to channel both simultaneously should tear a person apart at the molecular level." "Unless you've had practice containing opposing forces," Naruto added, unconsciously placing a hand over his stomach where Kurama's seal remained. Elsa's analytical mind processed these implications quickly. "So this Lord Eclipse wants to capture or kill you because you represent a unique threat to him. And he wants to recruit you because your ice powers could be corrupted for his purposes," Kira confirmed grimly. "As for these dimensional archives," Naruto continued, "if they contain knowledge about the multiverse, we need to find them." The archivist gave us the big picture, but clearly left out crucial details. Perhaps deliberately, Elsa suggested, frost patterns forming unconsciously around her fingers as she thought. Information can be dangerous in the wrong hands. If these archives contain knowledge about all dimensions, Lord Eclipse would naturally target them. And now Shadow Orochimaru claims Eclipse's forces control the nearest one, Kira added with a frustrated sigh. Which means we need to liberate it, Naruto concluded. Determination hardening his features. Knowledge is power, especially when facing an enemy we barely understand. Elsa rose, moving to a large ice mirror that dominated one wall. With a gesture, the mirror's surface rippled, transforming into a map of her kingdom and surrounding territories. These anomalies I mentioned, she said, pointing to several locations where the ice map showed distorted areas. They follow a pattern. The disappearances, shadow creature sightings, reality distortions, they create a spiral pattern centered here. Her finger tapped a location deep in the mountains beyond Arendel's borders. A dimensional weak point, Kira hypothesized, studying the pattern. Eclipse's forces always establish beachheads at natural fault lines between realities. Shadow Orochimaru came through a portal in your palace, Naruto reasoned, then the whole area must be thinning as a boundary between dimensions. Which means, Elsa concluded, that this archive might be accessible from somewhere near Arendelle, through one of these weakened points. She waved her hand, and the ice map expanded, showing greater detail of the mountain region she had indicated. There are legends of a hidden temple in these mountains, predating Arendelle's founding. Ancient texts refer to it as the Library of Worlds, a place where scholars could study other realms. That's got to be it, Naruto said. Excitement building, an outpost of the dimensional archives connected to your world. If we can reach it before Eclipse's forces fully secure it, Kira added, we might find information about his weaknesses, other champions, maybe even ways to protect dimensions from consumption. Elsa studied the map silently for several moments, internal conflict visible in her expression. Finally, she turned to face them fully. I will help you reach this temple, she declared. But I want absolute clarity about what happens afterward. What exactly do you expect of me as one of these champions? The directness of her question caught both slightly off guard. Naruto and Kira exchanged glances, realizing they hadn't fully considered this aspect themselves. The archivist spoke of uniting champions to fight Eclipse, Naruto began carefully. Which would mean leaving my kingdom to battle an interdimensional entity with two strangers I've just met, Elsa finished. Her tone neutral but eyes sharp. Abandoning my duties as queen, possibly endangering Arendelle in my absence. Your world is already in danger, Kira pointed out gently. These anomalies will spread. The shadow creatures will multiply. Eventually, the entire dimension will be consumed, Arendelle included. And what of my sister? My people, Elsa challenged. Am I to simply disappear without explanation? Anna has already experienced me shutting her out once before. I will not do so again, especially not with Arendelle under threat. Naruto considered her words carefully. This wasn't simply a powerful potential ally resisting recruitment. This was a ruler with genuine responsibilities and deep personal connections. Her concerns weren't excuses but legitimate obligations. What if, he suggested slowly, we approach this differently? Instead of asking you to abandon your kingdom, we make Arendelle our temporary base of operations. We find the archive, gather the information we need, then determine next steps based on what we learn. We need your help, Queen Elsa, Kira added sincerely. But steamrolling over your responsibilities isn't the way to get it. Something in Elsa's posture eased slightly, not full relaxation, but the subtle softening of someone who feels heard rather than merely recruited. That would be acceptable, she acknowledged. And please, if we're to be allies, Elsa is sufficient. Quote, a faint smile accompanied this concession, the first genuine warmth she had displayed since their arrival. The moment was brief but significant, a small crack in the regal facade. Their tentative accord was interrupted by a sudden tremor that shook the entire palace. Unlike the attack earlier, this disturbance felt deeper, as if the mountain itself shuddered. The ice walls groaned, and outside the windows, the sky rippled with unnatural aurora-like distortions in shades of purple and black. What now? Kira muttered, automatically reaching for her morpher. Elsa's expression grew alarmed as she pressed one palm against the ice wall, sensing through her connection to the structure. Something's happening to the fabric of reality around the palace. The boundary between dimensions is fluctuating. Naruto activated his Twilight morpher, scanning the holographic display that appeared. Multiple rifts forming. Not controlled portals. Random tears in dimensional walls. Is it eclipse? Kira asked, already morphing into her ranger form. No, Naruto replied, brow furrowed as he interpreted the readings. It's like dimensional indigestion. Too many forces pulling in different directions. The ice palace sits at a natural convergence point, Elsa realized. My powers were drawn here years ago, not by coincidence but because this location already had magical significance. Outside, the distortions intensified. Through the windows, they could see reality literally cracking, jagged lines appearing in the air itself, revealing glimpses of other worlds through the fissures. We need to stabilize it, Kira urged. If those rifts keep growing, they'll tear this entire mountain apart, Elsa finished grimly. Naruto studied his morpher's display intently. I might be able to channel the energies through the Twilight morpher, create a temporary stabilization field. You'd need an amplifier, Kira objected. The power requirements would be enormous. Elsa stepped forward, frost swirling around her hands as her expression shifted to determined resolve. My ice can serve as a crystalline amplifier. If your energy signatures are compatible with mine as you suggested. A resonance chamber, Kira breathed, understanding immediately. Like focusing light through precisely cut diamonds. Worth trying, Naruto agreed, activating his transformation. Twilight Sage power, activate. As his armor formed around him, Elsa began crafting an elaborate structure at the center of the main hall, a perfect dodecahedron of ice ith facets cut at mathematically precise angles. Inside this geometric shape, smaller crystals arranged themselves in fractal patterns, creating a three-dimensional amplification matrix. Ready when you are, Elsa called, maintaining concentration on her creation as it continued to evolve in complexity. Naruto positioned himself before the structure, placing both hands against its surface. Channel your power through the ice. I'll synchronize the Twilight energy to match its frequency. Kira took position at one of the other faces of the dodecahedron. I'll add Dino Thunder energy to help stabilize the waveform. Together, the three began channeling their respective energies into the ice construct. Elsa's power flowed naturally through the medium she had created, her connection to ice making the transfer effortless. Kira's yellow energy pulsed in steady rhythm, providing structural support to the growing field. Between them, Naruto's Twilight energy, part light, part shadow, wholly unique, served as the binding force. The construct began to glow, first with blue-white light from Elsa's ice, then adding yellow pulses from Kira's contribution. As Naruto's energy joined fully, the light shifted to silver with orange and black undertones, expanding outward in concentric spheres. Outside, the dimensional rifts responded, first growing more volatile as they encountered resistance. Then gradually stabilizing as the energy field established dominance over the local space-time fabric. It's working, Kira called over the harmonic resonance now filling the palace. Keep going, Naruto encouraged, pushing more power through the construct. We need to seal those rifts completely. Elsa's concentration was absolute, her hands moving in increasingly complex patterns as she refined the ice structure in real time. Responding to the energies flowing through it, ice spires throughout the palace began to align with the central matrix, turning the entire structure into one massive resonance chamber. The effort was taxing all three of them. Sweat beaded on Elsa's forehead despite the cold, while Kira's armor flickered occasionally with strain. Naruto felt Kurama supplementing their efforts. The fox's chakra merging seamlessly with the Twilight energy. Almost there, Kurama encouraged. The dimensional boundaries are reknitting. With a final surge of combined power, they pushed the stabilization field to its maximum extent. The ice construct flared with blinding light, momentarily transforming the entire palace into a beacon visible for miles around. When the light faded, the dimensional distortions had vanished. The sky outside returned to normal twilight hues, stars beginning to appear in the deepening blue. Elsa lowered her hands, exhaustion evident but satisfaction in her eyes. We did it. That was. Kira began, her armor disappearing as she powered down. Incredible, Naruto finished, his own transformation receding. The three of us our king together. I've never felt energy synchronized like that before. Our powers are indeed compatible, Elsa acknowledged, examining her hands thoughtfully. The ice responded to your energies as readily as to mine. Which confirms what the archivist told us, Kira noted. Your connection to the light aspect of the grid. Elsa moved to one of the ice mirrors, adjusting its surface to reflect the mountainside around them. The dimensional disruption has left traces, she observed, indicating faint lines visible in the landscape. Like scars in reality, or like a map, Naruto suggested, approaching the mirror. Look. They all converge at that point we identified earlier. The alleged location of the Library of Worlds, Elsa confirmed. It seems our path is marked for us. We should move quickly, Kira urged. That energy discharge was like setting off a flare. If Eclipse's forces weren't certain of our location before, they definitely are now. Elsa nodded, waving her hand to dissipate the elaborate ice construct they had created. I need to return to Arendelle briefly, to arrange matters with my sister and council. I cannot simply vanish into the mountains without explanation. Of course, Naruto agreed. We'll accompany you to ensure your safety, then proceed to the temple location together. My safety in my own kingdom. A hint of amusement colored Elsa's tone. I assure you, between my powers and Arendelle's guards, I'm quite secure within our borders. Against conventional threats, sure, Kira countered respectfully. But Shadow Orochimaru and those wolves aren't conventional. Eclipse wants you, specifically. Elsa considered this argument, then inclined her head in acknowledgement. Very well, though I should warn you that my sister will have countless questions about my armored companions from another dimension. We're used to explaining the unexplainable, Naruto grinned. It's practically part of the job description. The journey down the mountain proceeded swiftly, aided by Elsa's creation of an ice slide that carried them toward Arendelle with both speed and surprising comfort. Naruto, having experienced many forms of transportation across multiple dimensions now, had to admit the Queen's ice constructs ranked among the most elegant. As they approached the kingdom proper, lights twinkled welcomingly from windows, smoke curled from chimneys. And the overall atmosphere conveyed peaceful normalcy, a stark contrast to the interdimensional chaos they had just confronted. It's beautiful, Naruto commented as they slowed near the outskirts. Thank you, Elsa replied, genuine pride in her voice. Arendelle has flourished these past few years, despite unusual challenges. Like having a queen who can create ice palaces with a wave of her hand. Kira suggested wryly. Among other things, Elsa acknowledged with the ghost of a smile. They proceeded through gradually widening streets, citizens offering respectful bows to their queen while casting curious glances at her companions. Guards stationed throughout the town straightened to attention as they passed, though Naruto noticed their hands never strayed far from their weapons, vigilant despite the peaceful setting. Your security is well trained, he observed quietly. A necessity, Elsa replied. Not everyone appreciates Arendelle's prosperity or my particular gifts. The castle dominated the far side of town, its architecture elegant yet sturdy, clearly designed with both aesthetics and defense in mind. As they approached the main gates, a commotion became apparent, raised voices, hurried movements of guards, a general atmosphere of controlled alarm. Something's wrong, Elsa murmured, her pace quickening. A young woman with strawberry blonde hair rushed out to meet them. Her expression relieved at Elsa's appearance but strained with obvious concern. Elsa, thank goodness you're back. We have a situation. Anna, Elsa greeted, clasping her sister's hands briefly. What's happened? Reports from the eastern villages, shadow creatures appearing in greater numbers. And that's not all. Anna's gaze flickered curiously toward Naruto and Kira before returning to Elsa. A strange visitor arrived an hour ago, demanding audience with you. Says he represents someone called Lord Eclipse, and has a proposition for Arendelle. Naruto and Kira exchanged alarmed glances. Where is this visitor now? Elsa asked, her voice maintaining regal calm despite the tension evident in her posture. The Great Hall, under guard, Anna replied. Ristov doesn't trust him. Says he smells wrong somehow. She finally addressed the obvious question. And these are allies, Elsa stated simply. We'll discuss everything inside, but first, I need to meet this emissary. Anna nodded, though her curious gaze lingered on the strangers. As they proceeded through the castle gates, she fell into step beside Naruto. So, she began conversationally. My sister doesn't usually bring strangers home from her ice palace. You must be special. Despite the gravity of the situation, Naruto couldn't help smiling at Anna's directness. We're people with compatible interests in preventing dimensional catastrophe. Right, Anna nodded sagely. Perfectly normal explanation. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. Between us, is this Anyo? There, Elsa might freeze everything, situation, or more of a, magical creatures threatening the kingdom, scenario. I like to categorize our crises for the historical records. Before Naruto could formulate a response to this unexpected question, they reached the Great Hall. Two massive doors swung open to reveal a spacious chamber dominated by twin thrones at the far end. Arendelle guards lined the walls, hands resting on sword hilts, eyes fixed on the lone figure standing in the center of the room. The visitor bore no resemblance to Shadow Orochimaru or the Frost Wraith. Instead, he appeared, almost mundane, a middle-aged man in formal diplomatic attire, hands clasped behind his back as he studied a tapestry depicting Arendelle's history. Only when he turned to face them did his otherworldly nature become apparent. His eyes contained no pupils or irises, only swirling voids that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. When he smiled, his teeth appeared too numerous and too sharp for a human mouth. Queen Elsa, he greeted, his voice perfectly modulated yet somehow hollow. A pleasure to finally make your acquaintance. I am Ambassador Void, humble representative of Lord Eclipse, unifier of dimensions. Elsa's demeanor shifted instantly to full diplomatic formality. Ambassador, I understand you come with a proposition for my kingdom. Direct and efficient, Void nodded approvingly. Refreshing qualities in a ruler. Indeed, I bring an unprecedented opportunity for Arendelle and its remarkably gifted queen. His gaze shifted briefly to Naruto and Kira, a flicker of recognition crossing his features before the diplomatic mask returned. Though I had hoped for a private audience. Certain offers are best discussed without competitive interests present. NEOFFER concerning Arendelle can be spoken before its people and allies, Elsa replied coolly. Ambassador Void inclined his head in acquiescence. As you wish, Your Majesty. Lord Eclipse offers Arendelle protection in the coming convergence. While other dimensions will be consumed by necessity, yours could be preserved. Maintained as a specialized territory under his benevolent oversight. And the cost of this generous offer? Elsa inquired, frost forming subtly around her fingertips, a tell Naruto was beginning to recognize as her equivalent of a clenched fist. Minimal, Void assured with a smile that never reached those empty eyes. Lord Eclipse requires only your personal service as his lieutenant of ice and snow. Your powers, integrated with his greater vision, would ensure Arendelle Lee's survival while countless other realms perish. You're asking me to serve the very being threatening the multiverse, Elsa summarized flatly. To preserve my kingdom at the cost of countless others. I'm offering you the only realistic option, Your Majesty, Void countered, dropping some of the diplomatic pretense. Lord Eclipse cannot be stopped. The consumption of dimensions is inevitable. A natural process he merely accelerates and directs. Why sacrifice everything in futile resistance when you could preserve what matters most to you? Anna stepped forward, indignation overriding protocol. My sister doesn't abandon others to save herself. That's not who she is, and that's not what Arendelle stands for. Ambassador Void's expression hardened. Noble sentiments from the spare air. But perhaps the queen possesses more practical wisdom. Elsa's response came with quiet certainty. My answer is no, Ambassador. Arendelle will not prosper through the suffering of others, nor will I serve one who threatens all reality. I suspected as much, Void sighed, genuine disappointment in his tone. Lord Eclipse predicted your initial refusal, though he hoped your responsibility too. Your kingdom might override idealistic notions. His form began to change, diplomatic attire melting away to reveal armor of deepest black beneath. The human disguise sloughed off like shed skin, revealing a being composed of shadow substance barely contained in humanoid shape. Consider carefully, Queen Elsa, he continued, voice deepening to inhuman registers. This offer expires with my departure. What follows will be not diplomacy, but conquest. Guards drew swords, moving protectively toward their queen. Anna was quickly escorted backward by a tall blonde man, Kristoff, presumably, who had materialized from the sidelines with protective instinct. Naruto and Kira flanked Elsa, ready to transform if needed, but the Queen raised a hand to forestall immediate action. "Ambassador," she addressed the revealed creature with remarkable composure, "please convey my compliments to Lord Eclipse for the courtesy of an offer before hostilities. Such formalities are indeed civilized." Frost gathered more visibly around her hands now. "Also inform him that Arendelle has faced threats before, from forces both human and magical, and remains standing." Ambassador Void's form continued dissolving into shadow energy, coalescing around him in a vortex. "Your confidence is misplaced, Your Majesty. What comes for your world cannot be frozen or reasoned with." "Perhaps not," Elsa acknowledged. "But it can be fought." With those words, she gestured sharply. Ice erupted from the floor, encasing the ambassador in a perfect crystal prison before he could fully transition to shadow form. For a moment, the great hall fell silent. Guards frozen in mid-advance, Anna and Kristoff staring wide-eyed at the imprisoned emissary. Then, faintly at first but with growing intensity, cracks appeared in the ice. Black energy seeping through like oil. "That won't hold him long," Naruto warned, raising his morpher. "We need to get everyone to safety." "The castle evacuation tunnels," Anna suggested immediately. Kristoff, "Alert Captain Matthias." Before she could finish, the ice prison shattered. Ambassador Void emerged, his form now completely inhuman, a writhing mass of shadow tendrils surrounding a vaguely humanoid core of concentrated darkness. "Diplomacy concluded," the creature announced. "Conquest begins." Reality fractured around him, tearing open to reveal a swirling dimensional vortex. Unlike the natural rifts they had stabilized at the Ice Palace, this portal was clearly controlled, its edges precisely defined despite the chaotic energies within. Guards advanced bravely but futilely, their weapons passing through Void's shadow form without effect. The creature extended tendrils toward Elsa, only to be intercepted by Naruto and Kira, both transformed in flashes of light. "Get your people out," Kira shouted to Anna, parrying shadow tentacles with her Terra grips. "We'll handle the ambassador," Naruto added, Twilight blade manifesting in his hand. Elsa stood her ground, ice powers fully engaged as she created barrier after barrier. "This is my castle and my responsibility. And those are your people who need leadership," Naruto countered, nodding toward the civilians and guards being herded toward exit points by Anna and Kristoff. "We'll buy time, you ensure Arendelle's safety." Conflict played across Elsa's features, the ruler's duty warring with the warrior's instinct. Finally, practicality won. With a sharp nod, she backed toward her sister, still maintaining ice barriers to slow Void's advances. "Fall back to evacuation points," she commanded the remaining guards. "Princess Anna has authority until I rejoin you." As Arendelle's forces retreated in orderly fashion, Ambassador Void laughed, a sound like wind howling through empty catacombs. "Running only delays the inevitable. Queen Elsa, your dimension is already coming apart at the seams." To emphasize his point, he gestured toward the windows, where the sky above Arendelle had begun to fragment, showing the same distortion patterns they had witnessed at the Ice Palace. "Keep him occupied," Naruto instructed Kira. "I need to collapse that portal before reinforcements arrive." Kira nodded, unleashing a Terra scream that momentarily disrupted Void's shadow cohesion. "Just hurry." Naruto dashed toward the dimensional tear, analyzing its structure through his morpher's interface. Unlike natural rifts, this controlled portal had a specific energy signature, a weakness he could potentially exploit. "Twilight style. Dimensional seal," he called, channeling both light and shadow aspects simultaneously. Energy spiraled from his hands, forming counter-rotating bands that encircled the portal. The tear resisted, edges pulsing with dark power as Ambassador Void realized Naruto's intent. "No," the shadow creature roared, abandoning his assault on Kira to lunge toward Naruto. "You understand nothing of dimensional engineering, Ranger." "Maybe not," Naruto grunted, maintaining concentration on the sealing technique. "But I know plenty about closing things that shouldn't be open." The seal tightened around the portal, constricting its circumference. Void reached Naruto just as Kira intercepted him, their collision sending all three tumbling through the half-closed dimensional tear. Reality warped around them, the controlled pathway between dimensions collapsing as Naruto's seal disrupted its stability. Instead of the smooth transition Void had established, they experienced the chaotic turbulence of uncontrolled dimensional travel. "Hold on to me," Naruto shouted to Kira, extending a hand through the swirling maelstrom. Their fingers connected briefly before another surge of energy separated them. Ambassador Void's form stretched and distorted in the collapsing passage, his howls of rage becoming increasingly distant. Naruto tumbled through conceptual space, glimpsing fragments of countless dimensions, a cybernetic cityscape, a prehistoric jungle, a cosmos of living stars. Without the Twilight Morpher's protective field fully established, he felt reality itself scraping against his consciousness, threatening to tear his sense of self apart. Kit, stabilize your chakra, Kurama urged. Your natural energy is interacting with the dimensional barriers. Naruto struggled to center himself, drawing on sage techniques to harmonize with the chaotic energies. Gradually, the wildly spinning vortex began to organize around him, responding to his unconscious direction. An image formed in the swirling chaos, a massive structure of stone and crystal, suspended between dimensions. Ancient symbols adorned its facade, glowing with power that somehow called to Naruto's twilight energy. The archive, he realized, instinctively directing his fall toward this anchored reality. As he approached, he glimpsed movement on the archive's expansive entry platform, shadowy figures patrolling in organized patterns, and at their center, a familiar pale figure with long black hair. Shadow Orochimaru hadn't been bluffing. Eclipse's forces had indeed secured the dimensional archive. Naruto's trajectory carried him past this occupied entrance, toward a smaller, secondary structure connected to the main archive by bridges of crystallized light. As dimensional travel stabilized around him, he braced for impact, tucking into a roll as he materialized on solid ground once more. The landing wasn't graceful, but it was survivable. Naruto recovered quickly, scanning his surroundings with battle-ready awareness. He stood in what appeared to be an abandoned annex to the main archive, dust-covered shelves filled with crystalline tablets, holographic displays long powered down, ancient reading tables arranged in concentric circles around a central pedestal. Kira, he called softly, searching for any sign of his companion. No response came. Either she had landed elsewhere in the massive complex, or the collapsed portal had sent her to an entirely different location. Neither possibility was comforting. We're not alone, Kurama warned. Naruto tensed, senses extending through the shadowed chamber. There, a subtle movement behind one of the massive bookshelves. Too deliberate for random settling of dust. I know you're there, he announced, Twilight blade materializing in his hand. I'm not looking for trouble, but I'm definitely equipped for it. Silence stretched for several seconds before a voice responded, female, cautious, with an accent Naruto couldn't place. You're not one of Eclipse's shadows, the voice observed. But you're not from this dimension either. Quote, I'm Naruto Uzumaki, Twilight Sage Ranger, he replied, maintaining defensive readiness while keeping his tone non-threatening. I'm looking for information that can help stop Lord Eclipse. A soft, humorless laugh. Ambitious goal. Eclipse has consumed 17 dimensions already. What makes you think you can stop him? Because giving up isn't really my style, Naruto responded honestly. And because I'm not planning to fight him alone. More silence, then soft footsteps as the speaker finally emerged from hiding. A woman appeared from the shadows, her appearance causing Naruto to intake breath sharply. She wore close-fitting armor of midnight blue with silver accents, reminiscent of ranger designs but with subtle differences. Her face remained partially concealed by a hood, but what was visible showed sharp features and eyes of such deep purple they appeared almost black in the dim light. Most strikingly, shadows clung to her like a living cloak, responding to her movements as if semi-sentient. Another ranger, she noted, studying him with professional assessment. But your energy signature is unusual. Both light and shadow, coexisting. Interesting. And you are? Naruto asked, not lowering his guard despite her apparent lack of hostility. Amara Nightshade, she answered after brief consideration. Former Shadow Grid assassin, current fugitive from Lord Eclipse's forces, and probably the only reason you're still alive right now. She gestured toward the ceiling, where Naruto now noticed subtle energy barriers shimmering across the entrance ways. My dampening fields have kept your arrival hidden from the occupation forces, but they won't last indefinitely. If you want information from the archives, we need to move quickly. Wait, Naruto frowned, processing her introduction. Shadow Grid assassin. You worked for Eclipse. Not exactly. Amara replied, turning toward one of the dust-covered consoles. The shadow grid existed long before Eclipse corrupted it. Some of us served its original purpose, maintaining dimensional balance through necessary interventions. Her fingers danced across the console's surface, bringing ancient systems humming back to life. Holographic displays flickered, showing schematics of the archive's structure. The main repository is here, she indicated a massive central chamber, currently occupied by Shadow Orochimaru and a full contingent of Void Troopers. The dimensional navigation systems are here, another section illuminated, guarded by mechanized sentries. But what you probably need is here. She highlighted a smaller chamber near their current position. The Prophecy Vault, records of all major interdimensional events, past and future, including how to defeat Eclipse. Naruto asked, hope coloring his voice. Amara's expression remained neutral. Possibly. The vault doesn't offer simple solutions, but it contains patterns, precedents, possibilities. For someone with the right perspective, that might be enough. Why help me? Naruto questioned, the shinobi's inherent caution asserting itself. If you were part of the shadow grid. Because Eclipse betrayed everything the shadow grid was meant to protect, Amara replied, something dangerous flashing in those purple eyes. Balance. Necessary darkness that allows light to exist. He seeks only consumption, not equilibrium. She turned fully toward him, shadows swirling more actively around her as emotion broke through her controlled exterior. And because of Scene 17 Dimensions Die, Ranger. I'm not particularly eager to witness an 18th. Before Naruto could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. The dampening fields around the chamber flickered and failed, and distant shouts echoed from the main archive. They've detected you, Amara stated unnecessarily, already moving toward a concealed doorway. Decision time, Twilight Sage. Trust the shadow grid assassin, or take your chances with Eclipse's welcoming committee. Naruto extinguished his blade, decision made. Lead the way to the Prophecy Vault. Amara nodded once, sharp and efficient, then Shli. PPED into the hidden passage with Naruto close behind. As the entry sealed behind them, Shadow Orochimaru's voice echoed through the archive's announcement system. Attention all units. Dimensional intruder detected in the Western Annex. Subject matches Twilight Ranger profile. Capture priority Alpha. Lord Eclipse desires this one alive. The hunt had begun, and somewhere else in the sprawling archive, or perhaps in another dimension entirely, Kira faced her own challenges, separated from her allies but equally determined to complete their mission. The path to defeating Lord Eclipse remained uncertain. But one thing was becoming increasingly clear. The Twilight Sage would not stand alone in the coming battle. Champions were gathering, drawn together by fate, necessity, and the imminent threat to all existence. And in the Prophecy Vault ahead, ancient records waited to reveal exactly what such an alliance might accomplish, or how terribly it might fail. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, Frozen Bonds. Morning sunlight scattered across Arendel's fjord, transforming placid waters into a tapestry of diamond-bright reflections. From his vantage point atop the castle's western tower, Naruto watched the kingdom awaken. Fishermen launching boats, merchants arranging market stalls, children chasing each other through gradually filling streets. The peaceful scene stood in stark contrast to the chaos of the previous night's evacuation and the eerie silence that had followed Ambassador Void's dramatic departure. It's almost possible to forget we're in danger, Elsa remarked quietly, joining him at the parapet. The queen had exchanged her ice-crafted gown for more practical attire, a tailored royal blue jacket over riding pants and boots, her platinum hair braided simply down her back. The outfit suggested both authority and readiness for action, a combination Naruto had often observed in effective leaders. That's worth protecting, he replied, nodding toward the bustling town. Ordinary lives, everyday moments. Something in his tone must have revealed deeper meaning, as Elsa studied him with newfound curiosity. You've fought to protect your own home many times. Not a question, but Naruto answered anyway. The hidden leaf has faced its share of threats. Invasion, destruction, near annihilation. His gaze remained on Arendel's citizens, unseeing as memories surfaced. I watched it reduced to a crater once, rebuilt from nothing. Yet you still believe in fighting impossible odds, Elsa observed. A ghost of a smile crossed Naruto's face. Especially those Footsteps announced Kira's arrival, the former Dino Ranger looking surprisingly refreshed despite the previous night's events. She'd borrowed clothes from the castle staff, practical garments similar to Elsa's but in earthy browns and yellows that complemented her caramel-colored hair. Anna's council briefing is getting intense, she reported, leaning against the stone wall beside them. Your sis, Ter has some creative ideas about fortifying the kingdom against shadow monsters. Something about explosive ice sculptures and trebuchets launching barrels of lutefisk. Elsa pinched the bridge of her nose. Though Naruto detected faint amusement beneath her exasperation. Anna approaches problems, unconventionally. Hey, I'm not knocking it, Kira clarified, raising her hands defensively. In my experience, weird plans often work best against weird enemies. Speaking of plans, Naruto interjected, turning to face both women, we need one. The Dimensional Archive gave us information, but not much time. Following their tumultuous escape from the archive, Naruto with Amara's help, Kira through an entirely different series of events involving a rebel faction of the archive's mechanical guardians, they had reunited in Arendelle with crucial intelligence about Eclipse's operations. Most pressing was the discovery that the Shadow Lord had established a harvesting beacon in Elsa's dimension, accelerating the consumption process. 3 days, Elsa stated flatly, frost forming unconsciously around her fingers. 3 days before the beacon reaches full power and my entire world begins collapsing inward. Which is why we need to find and destroy it, Kira added, her usual sarcastic edge replaced by determined focus. The archive records suggested these beacons are Eclipse's NDARD first phase of dimensional consumption. Naruto nodded, recalling the crystalline data tablets Amara had helped him access. They create a resonance point that weakens reality's structural integrity, allowing Eclipse's void harvester to extract the dimension's unique energy signature. Like drilling for oil, Kira simplified, if oil was the fundamental essence of an entire reality. Else, turned back toward the view of her kingdom, shoulders squared beneath the weight of responsibility. And what of this ritual, the records described? The one requiring my ice powers. The convergence mapping, Naruto confirmed. According to the prophecy vault, your ice can serve as a multidimensional conduit when properly aligned with the Twilight Morpher's energy. It should reveal the Akin's exact location and potentially identify other dimensional weak points Eclipse might target next. Should, Kira emphasized skeptically. Ancient prophetic records aren't exactly step-by-step instruction manuals. Do we have a better option? Naruto challenged gently. Kira's expression conceded the point. Not really. We need to find that beacon before shadow troops start pouring through every dimensional crack in the kingdom. Which appears to be happening already, Elsa noted grimly, pointing toward the mountain passes beyond Arendelle's borders. Following her gesture, Naruto spotted the disturbance, a column of unnatural darkness descending from clouds that had materialized too suddenly to be weather phenomena. Even at this distance, the writhing mass of shadow had a distant sentient quality that made his skin crawl. That's our cue, he declared, the Twilight Morpher gleaming on his wrist as it detected the dimensional disturbance. Time to see what these powers can really do. The village of North Pass served as Arendelle's northernmost outpost, situated strategically where mountain trails narrowed to a defensible point. Its 200 residents primar highly supported the kingdom's lumber operations and mountain patrols. This morning, however, they faced an enemy no frontier training had prepared them for. Shadow thralls poured from a rift hovering above the village center, their semi-corporeal forms flowing like spilled ink across buildings and streets. Unlike the wolves Naruto had encountered previously, these creatures walked upright in cruel mockery of human form. Their elongated limbs moving with unsettling fluidity as they surrounded terrified villagers. Containment Pattern Alpha, Captain Matthias barked to the Royal Guard detachment that had arrived minutes earlier. The veteran soldier maintained remarkable composure despite the otherworldly nature of their opponents. Civilian evacuation through the southern pass. Secure the perimeter. Guards formed a protective cordon, shepherding villagers toward safety while maintaining shield walls against darting shadow attacks. They fought with disciplined precision, but conventional weapons proved minimally effective against enemies that could partially dissipate around blade strikes. Matthias himself stood at the front line, his sword glowing faintly blue, some enchantment T allowed it to inflict actual damage on the thralls. 3 shadow creatures lay dissolving at his feet, yet for each one dispatched, 5 more emerged from the widening rift. Fall back to secondary positions, he commanded as the shadow tide threatened to overwhelm them. We can't hold the village center. A wave of ice suddenly swept across the ground before the guards, forming a crystalline barrier that momentarily halted the shadow advance. Frost spiraled up building walls and across cobblestone streets in intricate defensive patterns. Captain Matthias, Elsa's voice rang with authority as she strode into the village. Flanked by Naruto and Kira, your men have fought bravely. Secure the evacuation route, we'll handle the incursion. Relief visibly washed over the captain's weathered features. Your Majesty, we didn't expect. A queen defends her people, Captain, Elsa interrupted gently. Now go. Matthias saluted sharply before organizing his men into a strategic withdrawal. Covering the remaining civilians, escape. As the guards fell back, Elsa stepped forward, ice powers fully manifesting around her hands. Ready, she asked her companions, cool composure belied by the intensity in her eyes. Born ready, Kira replied, activating her morpher. Dino Thunder, power up. Yellow energy engulfed her, materializing as her ranger armor. Twilight Sage power, activate. Naruto called simultaneously, silver-orange light and shadow swirling around him as his transformation completed. The shadow creatures reacted instantly to these power signatures, abandoning their pursuit of fleeing villagers to converge on the 3 champions. Their movements became more coordinated, suggesting collective intelligence directing formerly random attacks. They recognize ranger energy, Kira noted. Terra grips materializing in her hands. And they don't like it. Good, Naruto replied, Twilight blade forming in a spiral of light and shadow. Makes our job simpler. Elsa raised both hands, ice erupting in a devastating wave that caught the first line of thralls, freezing them mid-lunge. Eliminate the source, she directed, nodding toward the rift. All contain the perimeter. No further coordination needed, they moved with natural teamwork honed through recent shared battles. Elsa created ice platforms that Kira used to launch aerial attacks, while Naruto's Dao clones multiplied their effective fighting force. Shadow thralls dissolved beneath precision ice spikes, resonant sonic screams, and the dimensional cutting edge of the Twilight blade. Yet for all their effectiveness, the rift continued widening, disgorging enemies faster than they could be eliminated. Naruto fought his way toward the dimensional tear, analyzing its structure through his helmet's enhanced vision. This isn't a natural rift, he called to his companions. It's being maintained from the other side. As if confirming his assessment, the rift's edges stabilized into a defined oval shape. Energy patterns shifting from chaotic to controlled. A figure emerged through this newly structured portal, humanoid but clearly not human, its form composed of metallic segments over a shadowy core. A helmet with a featureless faceplate concealed any features, while armor reminiscent of ranger designs but corrupted with organic shadow growths covered its body. Void Ranger, Kira identified grimly. Disengaging from 3 thralls to face this new threat. Eclipse's corrupted warriors. The Void Ranger surveyed the battlefield with calculated stillness before focusing on Naruto. When it spoke, its voice emerged as a harmonized dual tone, one mechanical, one organic, neither remotely human. Twilight anomaly detected, it announced. Initiating containment protocol. Without warning, it launched forward with impossible speed, covering the distance to Naruto in a blur of shadow. Only years of shinobi training allowed him to parry the first strike, a shadow energy blade T materialized from the ranger's forearm, clashing against his twilight weapon with a sound like reality tearing. I'm guessing you're not interested in talking this out. Naruto grunted, disengaging to create distance. The Void Ranger tilted its head in an unsettlingly mechanical gesture. Curious. Most dimensional anomalies do not attempt communication. Adjusting approach. It raised its arm, the shadow blade reconfiguring into what resembled a corrupted version of a ranger blaster. Dark energy gathered at its muzzle, building to critical levels before discharging in a widespread attack pattern. Naruto dodged the primary blast but found himself surrounded by secondary energy projectiles that tracked his movement. One struck his armored shoulder, the impact transferring through his Rotection is concentrated cold rather than physical damage. That weapon targets your life force directly, Kurama warned. Armor won't fully protect you. Thanks for the update, Naruto muttered, creating shadow clones to confuse the targeting system. Across the village center, Elsa and Kira battled the continuing wave of thralls, gradually losing ground as their attention divided bet. Foot soldiers and the more dangerous Void Ranger. Though they fought effectively as individuals, the lack of coordinated strategy against multiple threat types was beginning to tell. The Void Ranger exploited this tactical weakness, positioning itself to separate the three champions. It fired systematically, forcing Naruto away from his allies while a fresh surge of thralls pressed Elsa and Kira in the opposite direction. "He's isolating us," Kira called, her terror scream temporarily clearing a path through shadow creatures. "Fall back to the fountain," Elsa directed, creating an ice wall to buy precious seconds. "We need to consolidate." Naruto found himself hemmed between buildings, the Void Ranger advancing with methodical precision. Shadow energy gathered around its form, coalescing into what appeared to be a power-up sequence. "Void phase activation," it announced tonelessly. "Commencing extraction." Its form blurred, shifting partially out of normal reality, a state Naruto recognized from his own experiences with dimensional travel. The Twilight blade passed through the Ranger's semi-phased body without effect, while its counter-attacks landed with increasing potency. This isn't working, Naruto realized, blocking a strike that numbed his entire arm despite connecting with his blade rather than his body. A flash of inspiration struck as he recalled the archive records concerning Void Rangers, corrupted warriors whose connection to the morphing grid had been inverted, their life force perpetually draining into Eclipse's collection systems. "The connection goes both ways," he murmured, understanding blooming. "If they draw power from Eclipse, they might be vulnerable to the opposing force," Kurama concluded, following his reasoning. "But sustaining that much light aspect energy will be seriously unpleasant," Naruto agreed. "But we're out of better options." He dismissed the Twilight blade, centering himself as he accessed the rarely used light aspect independently. Unlike his balanced Twilight techniques, this approach deliberately disrupted the equilibrium, channeling pure light grid energy without shadow counterbalance. Pain lanced through him immediately, his body protesting the imbalance. Gritting his teeth, Naruto pressed forward, light gathering around his hands in concentrated brilliance. "Solar convergence," he called, forcing the technique through despite his system's resistance. Light erupted outward, striking the phased Void Ranger directly. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The corrupted warrior convulsed as its shadow elements recoiled from the pure light energy. Its phased state destabilized, forcing full rematerialization as it staggered backward. Naruto pressed the advantage despite the technique's drain on his own stamina. Light energy continued streaming from his hands, pushing the Void Ranger further back with each pulse. Cracks appeared in its armor, revealing glimpses of a corrupted morphing grid connection beneath, veins of shadow energy pumping like a perverse circulatory system. "Return to your master with a message," Naruto commanded, focusing the light into a final surge. He Twilight Sage won't let any more dimensions fall." The concentrated blast struck the Void Ranger squarely in its chest emblem, shattering the corrupted morpher embedded there. Shadow energy exploded outward as the connection to Eclipse severed, the Ranger's form destabilizing completely. It collapsed into component particles, swirling momentarily before being sucked back into the dimensional rift. With its controller defeated, the portal began losing structural integrity, edges fluctuating as its maintenance energy dissipated. Shadow thralls throughout the village reacted to this disruption, their movements becoming erratic and uncoordinated. Naruto staggered, light energy fading as he rebalanced his connection to both grid aspects. The temporary over-reliance on pure light had exact physical toll, exhaustion settling into his limbs, vision blurring slightly as his body struggled to recover equilibrium. "Reckless," Kurama chided, already working to stabilize their shared energy system. "Effective, but reckless. Sometimes that's my specialty," Naruto replied tiredly, turning toward his companion's position. Across the village center, Elsa and Kira had used the Heral's disorganization to gain the upper hand. Working in seamless tandem, they systematically eliminated shadow creatures, Elsa immobilizing groups with precision ice strikes, Kira shattering them with concentrated sonic attacks. Their battlefield coordination showed remarkable development despite their short time fighting together. Naruto made his way toward them, leaning occasionally against Wielding's for support as his strength gradually returned. By the time he reached the village fountain, the last thralls were dissolving into shadow particles, and the dimensional rift had collapsed entirely. That, Kira declared, powering down as her armor disappeared in a flash of yellow, was way too close. Elsa nodded agreement, though her composure remained intact despite the exertion evident in her slightly heightened breathing. They're becoming more organized. The foot soldiers were hurting villagers, not just attacking randomly. Harvesting, Naruto explained grimly, his own armor retracting. The archive records described it. Eclipse's forces collect life energy before consuming dimensions. Maximum extraction. Charming, Kira muttered, surveying the damaged village. Though buildings remained standing, shadow corruption had left its mark. Blackened streaks on walls, wilted vegetation where thralls had passed, a subtle wrongness to the very air. At least we saved the people. But for how long? Elsa questioned softly, creating a small ice sculpture of Arendelle in her palm. These attacks will continue, growing stronger each time. We need to find that beacon. The convergence mapping, Naruto agreed. Straightening as Kurama's assistance restored more of his energy. We should proceed to your ice palace immediately. According to the archive, the ritual requires a naturally occurring focus point of dimensional energy. And my palace sits at exactly such a convergence, Elsa concluded. That's why I was drawn to create it there, my powers unconsciously responding to the dimensional thinness. Not creepy at all, Kira remarked, though her tone lacked genuine concern. Magic ice castle built precisely where dimensions wear thin. Totally normal tourist attraction. Despite the gravity of their situation, Naruto found himself smiling at Kira's sardonic humor, a coping mechanism he'd come to appreciate during their dimension-hopping adventures. Captain Matthias, Elsa called as the Royal Guard commander approached from the southern path. Status report. All civilians evacuated safely, Your Majesty, Matthias reported with military precision. UARDS maintaining perimeter security at secondary positions. No casualties beyond minor injuries. Relief visibly washed through Elsa's regal bearing. Excellent work, Captain. Have the villagers ESC ordered to Arendelle proper and establish watch posts along all northern approaches. Any sign of shadow activity is to be reported immediately. And the village itself? Matthias inquired, gesturing to the shadow-marked buildings. Elsa considered briefly. Temporarily abandoned. These shadow corruptions may have lingering effects we don't fully understand. Frost gathered around her fingers as determination hardened her features. We'll reclaim it once the source is eliminated. Yes, Your Majesty, Matthias acknowledged, recognizing the finality in her tone. As he turned to relay orders to his men, Elsa addressed her interdimensional companions. The journey to the Ice Palace takes several hours by conventional means, she noted pragmatically. Given our timeline, I suggest we expedite travel. I could create shadow clones to carry us, Naruto offered, though the lingering fatigue in his voice undermined the suggestion. Or, Elsa countered with the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. We could use my ice powers for their intended purpose. She gestured elegantly, frost spreading from her feet. Transportation. This, Kira shouted over the rushing wind, is completely insane and totally awesome. Naruto couldn't help but agree as they rocketed along Elsa's freshly created ice slide, the construction materializing continuously before them while disappearing behind. Like an elaborate roller coaster crafted from living ice, it carried them up mountain slopes and across valleys at breathtaking speed. Elsa led their bizarre toboggan, hands extended forward, as she simultaneously created their path and controlled their velocity. Her expression showed rare unguarded enjoyment, the burden of queenship temporarily lightened by the pure exercise of her abilities. How are you even calculating the structural support for these turns? Kira called forward, professional curiosity breaking through her exhilaration as they navigated a particularly dramatic spiral. I'm not calculating anything, Elsa replied, her voice carrying easily despite the wind. The ice knows what I need. Intuitive material manipulation, Naruto observed, recognizing the phenomenon from his own relationship with chakra. The medium responds to intent rather than conscious direction. Elsa glanced back, surprise and something like gratitude flickering across her features. Exactly. You understand. Similar principle with chakra in my world, Naruto explained. Advanced users don't micromanage every aspect, they establish intent and their energy responds accordingly. Must be nice, Kira remarked wryly. Ranger tech requires precise activation sequences and maintenance. No intuitive shortcuts. Different approaches, similar results, Naruto noted diplomatically. Aware of the slight competitive edge entering the conversation. He'd noticed this dynamic developing between the two women, unspoken but increasingly apparent in their interactions. Before the discussion could continue, Elsa banked their ice path sharply, revealing the North Mountain and her palace crowning its peak. Even in daylight, the structure captured attention, sunlight refracting through perfectly clear ice to cast rainbow patterns across surrounding snowfields. No matter how many times I see it, Naruto commented genuinely, that palace is impressive. It's beautiful, Kira agreed, momentarily setting aside her earlier tension. Like something from a fairy tale. Something softened in Elsa's expression. Thank you. It represents freedom to me. The first place I could truly be myself without fear. The ice slide carried them directly to the palace entrance, dissolving into harmless powder as they dismounted. Unlike their previous visit, Elsa had arranged for the palace to remain empty, no guards. No attendants, just pristine solitude awaiting their arrival. I've recreated the main hall specifically for the convergence mapping, Elsa explained, leading them inside. Based on your descriptions from the archive records. The transformation was immediately apparent. Gone were the elegant staircases and decorative elements that had previously defined the space. Instead, the hall now featured a massive circular platform inscribed with intricate geometric patterns. Surrounding this central area, ice columns rose to the vaulted ceiling, each carved with symbols. Naruto recognized from the Dimensional Archive's notation system. You created all of this from our description? He asked, impressed by both the accuracy and artistic execution. I have some experience with architectural ice sculpture. Elsa replied with subtle understatement. The symbols appeared in my mind quite clearly once I began. Almost as if they were already there, waiting to be revealed, Kira finished. Running her hand along one ice column. The grid sometimes works that way, implanting knowledge when needed. The archive mentioned this location exists at a natural convergence point, Naruto recalled. Activating his morpher to scan the environment. Holographic readings confirmed what he suspected. The barriers between dimensions are naturally thinner here. Your ice is responding to energies already present. Elsa nodded thoughtfully, approaching the central platform. I felt it the first time I came to this mountain. A resonance with my powers I couldn't explain. It's why I chose this location. Well, your intuition might save your entire dimension, Kira observed, examining the platform's inscriptions. These match the convergence mapping diagrams perfectly. So how do we proceed? Elsa asked, practical focus returning. Naruto consulted the morpher's data storage, accessing information extracted from the archive. According to the records, we need to establish a 3-point resonance circuit. Your ice powers serve as the dimensional conduit, anchoring us to this reality. My Twilight energy provides the scanning medium, able to detect multidimensional signatures. And Kira's connection to her specific grid frequency acts as a calibration constant. In English, Kira prompted, arms crossed skeptically. We stand in a triangle formation, Naruto simplified. Channel our respective energies into the platform, and hopefully get a multidimensional map showing Eclipse's beacon location. Hopefully, being the operative word, Kira noted, though she moved to one point of the platform without further objection. The archive records were clear about the theory, Naruto defended, taking his own position. Just not big on step-by-step instructions. Interdimensional scavenger hunts rarely come with user manuals, Elsa observed dryly, completing their triangle formation. Shall we begin? Naruto nodded, raising his arm. Twilight Sage Power, activate. As his transformation completed, Kira followed suit. Dino Thunder, power up. Yellow and silver-orange energies illuminated the ice hall, casting complex shadows as their respective armors formed. At the third point, Elsa raised her hands, ice magic spiraling around her in increasingly complex patterns. Focus your energies toward the center, Naruto instructed, directing. Twilight energy downward into the platform. The ice should begin resonating with our combined power signatures. True to his words, the platform's inscriptions illuminated as their energies converged, Elsa's ice-blue light, Kira's vibrant yellow, and Naruto's silver-orange twilight energy intermingling at the center point. The ice beneath them vibrated subtly, a harmonic tone rising in pitch as resonance built. "It's working," Elsa observed, maintaining perfect concentration despite the increasing power flow. "The ice is responding." The platform's glow intensified, light traveling outward, along channels carved into the floor and up the surrounding columns. Symbols illuminated in sequence, ancient dimensional mathematics calculating complex equations as the mapping process initialized. Above the platform's center, light coalesced into a three-dimensional projection, Arendelle and surrounding territories rendered in perfect detail but transposed into energy signatures rather than physical topography. Different colors represented varying concentrations of dimensional stability, clearly showing fracture points where reality had already begun thinning. "There," Kira identified, nodding toward a pulsing dark purple node deep in the mountain range beyond Arendelle's borders. "That has to be the beacon." Confirming, Naruto agreed, his helmet's systems analyzing the signature. Quote, "Energy pattern matches archive records of Harvester beacon technology. And those," he indicated several smaller nodes branching outward, "appear to be subsidiary collection points. They're siphoning dimensional energy back to the main beacon." Elsa studied the projection with analytical precision, memorizing locations relative to known geographical features. "The main beacon is in the Valley of El Iving Rock, an ancient place with powerful magical connections. My family has historical ties to its inhabitants." Magical rock trolls, Kira recalled from information Elsa had shared previously. Why am I not surprised that Eclipse would target a magical hotspot? Maximum extraction efficiency, Naruto confirmed grimly. The archive described this standard approach. Eclipse's forces identify low cations with concentrated dimensional energy and establish harvesting operations there first. As their analysis continued, the mapping projection expanded, zooming outward to display something unexpected. A web of connections extending beyond Arendelle's dimension, tendrils of light representing pathways to other realities. "What are we seeing now?" Elsa questioned, frost unconsciously forming round her feet as concentration intensified. "It's a dimensional transit map," Naruto realized, excitement coloring his voice. "The convergence mapping isn't just showing us Eclipse's beacon, it's revealing the network of connections between your dimension and others, including," Kira began, before interrupting herself with a sharp intake of breath. "There. That signature. It's from my dimension." Among the web of connections, one pathway glowed with distinctive yellow energy that matched Kira's ranger signature. The projection zoomed further, revealing glimpses of a cityscape that clearly triggered emotional recognition. "Reefside," she whispered, voice thick with sudden emotion. "My home dimension is still there." The implications weren't lost on any of them. If Kira's dimension remained intact despite Eclipse's previous attack, perhaps her fellow rangers had survived as well. Before they could process this revelation fully, the projection shifted again, focusing on another connection point glowing with ominous purple-black energy. Unlike the other pathways, this one pulsed with artificial regularity, deliberate rather than naturally occurring. "That's not a natural dimensional connection," Naruto observed, the morpher's analysis confirming his suspicion. "It's constructed. A direct link between Arendelle's dimension and..." The projection expanded, revealing the endpoint of this artificial connection, a realm of perpetual shadow, where landscapes existed in negative relief against a backdrop of absolute darkness. Structures of impossible architecture dotted this shadow dimension, centered around a massive citadel that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Eclipse's shadow realm, Kira identified, tension evident in her stance. "His base of operations between dimensional conquests. And directly connected to my kingdom," Elsa noted, ice cracking beneath her feet as controlled anger surfaced briefly. "A private entrance for invasion. But also an opportunity," Naruto suggested, tactical mind already processing implications. "If we can access this connection point, we could potentially strike directly at Eclipse's power base rather than just destroying the local beacon. One apocalyptic problem at a time," Kira cautioned. The beacon needs to be eliminated within 3 days or this entire dimension collapses, remember. Before Naruto could respond, the mapping projection suddenly destabilized, colors shifting as interference patterns disrupted the carefully established resonance. Something's wrong, Elsa warned, struggling to maintain her ice conduit as vibrations intensified beneath them. The convergence is becoming unstable. We're being scanned, Naruto realized, helmet displays flashing warning indicators. Something from the shadow realm is tracing our mapping signal back to its source. The artificial connection between dimensions flared brightly in the projection, energy surging along its pathway toward their location. The ice palace trembled, crystalline structures groaning as dimensional pressure built within the convergence point. Disengage, Kira shouted, attempting to withdraw her energy from the platform. Too late, Naruto countered, reading the rapidly escalating situation. Containment protocol activating, he redirected his Twilight energy, forming a protective barrier around the three of them as the mapping projection collapsed inward. Reality itself seemed to fold around the ice palace, dimensional boundaries thinning to transparency as the shadow realm connection fully activated. What's happening? Elsa demanded, maintaining remarkable composure despite the chaos unfolding around them. The mapping created a temporary bridge, Naruto explained rapidly, reinforcing his barrier. As the palace began dissolving into component dimensional particles. Something on the other side hijacked it, converting observation into transportation. Meaning, Kira pressed, back-to-back with her companions as reality continued unraveling. We're being pulled into the shadow dimension, Naruto stated grimly. Hold tight to each other. The three champions clasped hands, forming a human chain as Naruto's Twilight barrier became their only protection. Beyond this thin shell of stable reality, the ice palace disintegrated completely, component molecules scattered across dimensional boundaries as the convergence point collapsed. Darkness enveloped them, absolute and consuming. The sensation of falling without motion, of simultaneously existing everywhere and nowhere, permeated their consciousness. Only their physical connection to each other and Naruto's Twilight barrier preserved their coherence as individual entities. After what seemed like eternity compressed into moments, they impacted something solid. The barrier shattered, its protective function exhausted, leaving them sprawled across an obsidian surface that drank light rather than reflected it. Naruto recovered first, combat reflexes overriding disorientation as he surveyed their surroundings. They had materialized on a platform overlooking a vast shadow landscape, the same negative relief environment glimpsed in the mapping projection. Above them, no sun or stars illuminated the perfect blackness, yet somehow visibility remained, objects defined by edges of deep purple energy. Everyone okay? He asked, helping his companions to their feet. Kira nodded shakily, her ranger transformation having automatically disengaged during transition. Dimensional travel without proper containment. Not recommended for repeat experiences. Elsa rose with quiet dignity despite obvious discomfort, ice automatically forming protective patterns around her hands. Where exactly are we? The shadow dimension, Naruto confirmed, his own armor retracting as he conserved energy. Specifically, some kind of arrival platform connected to the artificial pathway we detected. Perfect, Kira muttered sarcastically, surveying the alien landscape. Accidentally teleported ourselves directly into enemy territory. Just another Tuesday for interdimensional heroes. At least we're together, Naruto pointed out pragmatically. And technically, we've gained direct access to Eclipse's domain. Information that would have taken months to extract from the archives. Optimism in the face of catastrophe, Elsa observed with a raised eyebrow. Is that another of your specialized abilities? More like developed survival trait, Naruto replied with a slight grin. Comes from years of missions going sideways in spectacular fashion. Their banter ceased abruptly as movement registered at the platform's perimeter, shapes detaching from surrounding shadows with liquid grace. Humanoid but unnaturally proportioned, these shadow sentinels surrounded them with silent efficiency, weapons manifesting from their very substance. Don't engage, a female voice commanded from beyond the circle of sentinels. They're not Eclipse's forces. The sentinels hesitated, dimensional weapons still primed but not advancing. From between their ranks stepped a figure that caused all three champions to tense for entirely different reasons. She moved like living shadow given purpose, each step precisely calculated, her form seeming to exist partially in standard reality and partially beyond it. Close-fitting armor of Midnig. HT blue with silver accents protected her lithe frame, while a hooded cloak of shadow material concealed her features until she deliberately pushed it back. Sharp features framed by raven black hair emerged from the hood's confines. But what immediately captured attention were her eyes, deep purple irises that seemed to contain miniature galaxies of darker shadow swirling within them. Beautiful in the way that winter midnight is beautiful, remote, dangerous, and compelling. Dimensional travelers, she addressed them, voice carrying subtle harmonics that suggested familiarity with shadow acoustics. Specifically, a Dino Thunder Ranger, an ice manipulator from a quaternary dimension, and her gaze settled on Naruto, those remarkable eyes narrowing slightly. The Twilight anomaly. Interesting combination. Naruto stepped forward, placing himself subtly between the newcomer and his companions. You seem to know quite a bit about us already. A smile curved the woman's lips, not warm, but not entirely cold either. Shadow dimension. Shadow perception. Your energy signatures practically announced your arrival across half this realm. And you are? Elsa inquired, diplomatic training evident in her carefully neutral tone. Amara Nightshade, the woman replied after brief consideration. Former Shadow Grid assassin, current resistance leader against Lord Eclipse's consumption campaign. And probably the only reason you three aren't already being processed in harvesting chambers. Recognition flashed across Naruto's features. Shadow Grid assassin, like the woman who helped me in the dimensional archive. Surprise briefly disrupted Amara's controlled expression. You encountered another Shadow Grid operative. Recently, in the archive's western annex, Naruto confirmed. She identified herself with the same title, helped me access the prophecy vault before Eclipse's forces could capture me. Calculation visibly processed behind those galaxy-filled eyes. Dimensional synchronicity. Interesting. That encounter hasn't happened in my timeline yet, but clearly will. She refocused on their immediate situation, which explains how you attempted a convergence mapping without proper containment protocols. The archive records didn't exactly include safety warnings, Kira noted defensively. Interdimensional knowledge is deliberately compartmentalized, Amara replied with a dismissive gesture. Prevents any single entity from accessing too much power. She signaled the Shadow Sentinels, who immediately withdrew, melting back into the surrounding darkness. Yo. Fortunate your mapping signal was intercepted by my resistance cell rather than Eclipse's harvesters. Fortunate is debatable, Elsa observed coolly. We've been pulled from our dimension while a harvester beacon threatens its existence. We had rather specific tactical objectives before this detour. Something like respect flickered in Amara's expression at the Queen's composure. Your dimension. Arendelle, correct. Ice-dominant magical system with quaternary physical constants. At their surprised reactions, she continued, Eclipse has it scheduled for consumption within the week. Standard harvesting beacon already deployed. We know, Naruto stated flatly. We were preparing to destroy it when your interception happened. Were you indeed? Genuine interest replaced Amara's professional detachment. With what weapon system? Harvester beacons are constructed from condensed dimensional boundary material. Conventional attacks, even magical or grid-powered, barely scratch them. The question highlighted an uncomfortable gap in their planning. The archive had revealed the beacon's location but provided limited tactical information about neutralization methods. We were working on that part, Kira admitted reluctantly. Amara's smile returned, more calculating than before. Then perhaps this detour is more fortunate than you realize. She gestured toward the shadow landscape beyond their platform. My resistance cell has developed specialized weaponry specifically designed to disrupt harvester technology. Eclipse doesn't know we exist, an advantage we've maintained through careful operation within the shadow dimension. You're offering to help us? Elsa asked, understandable skepticism in her tone. I'm offering a mutually beneficial arrangement, Amara corrected. You need dimensional disruption technology to save your world. I need access to the Twilight anomaly's unique energy signature for purposes of my own. Her gaze fixed on Naruto with unsettling intensity. Your ability to channel both light and shadow aspects simultaneously represents something thought impossible. Something that could potentially accelerate our resistance efforts considerably. I have a name, Naruto pointed out, meeting her gaze directly. Naruto Uzumaki. Not. Twilight anomaly. Names are vulnerabilities in dimensional warfare, Amara replied, though something in her expression softened marginally. But noted, Naruto Uzumaki. What exactly do you want from him? Kira demanded, protective instinct evident in her stance. Energy synchronization, Amara answered simply. A sample of stabilized Twilight resonance to calibrate our dimensional disruption weapons. Nothing invasive or permanent, and in exchange, Elsa prompted, negotiator's instinct engaging. Specialized disruption charges calibrated to your dimension-specific frequency, Amara detailed. Weaponry capable of not just destroying Eclipse's harvester beacon but severing his artificial connection to your world entirely. Plus safe transport back to your dimension through our controlled pathways rather than the chaotic method that brought you here. The offer was compelling, addressing their immediate tactical needs while providing solutions to problems they hadn't fully formulated. Yet years of diplomatic and combat experience made all three champions wary of arrangements that seemed too convenient. How do we know we can trust you? Naruto asked directly. No offense, but Shadow Grid Assassin doesn't exactly scream, reliable ally. Rather than taking offense, Amara's expression suggested approval of his caution. You don't know. Trust is a luxury in dimensional conflict. She extended her hand, shadow energy coalescing above her palm to form a three-dimensional projection of Eclipse's citadel. But consider this, if I served Eclipse, you would already be in containment. If I sought personal gain, I would exploit your unexpected arrival rather than offering technological exchange. The projection expanded, showing interior schematics of the massive structure. And I would certainly not provide this complete tactical mapping of Eclipse's primary fortress, including harvester production facilities and dimensional navigation systems. Even Kira's skepticism faltered at this display of apparent good faith. The intelligence value of such information was incalculable, providing insights into Eclipse's operations that would have taken years to gather otherwise. Why oppose Eclipse? Elsa questioned, cutting to the heart of motivation. If you're native to this shadow dimension, what stake do you have in preserving other realities? Perceptive question, Amara acknowledged. I oppose Eclipse because he perverts the natural order. Shadow is not Maya, NT to consume, it exists in balance with light, defining boundaries and providing necessary contrast. Something passionate briefly animated her controlled demeanor. He doesn't seek equilibrium but absolute dominance. The multiverse cannot sustain such imbalance. Naruto studied her intently during this explanation, years of judging character allowing him to detect subtle tells beneath her professional exterior. Despite her controlled presentation, genuine conviction underscored her words, the passion of someone fighting for principles rather than mere survival. I believe her, he stated simply, addressing his companions while maintaining eye contact with Amara. Just like that, Kira questioned incredulously. I've spent my life dealing with people hiding their true intentions, Naruto explained. She's being selective with information, but not lying about her opposition to Eclipse. Elsa considered silently before nodding agreement. I concur. Her offer addresses our immediate tactical needs while providing additional strategic advantages. The potential benefits outweigh the risks. 2 against 1, Kira sighed, though her posture relaxed slightly. Fine, but I'm maintaining healthy skepticism throughout this mutually beneficial arrangement. I would expect nothing less from a Dino Thunder Ranger, Amara replied, something almost like approval in her tone. Dinosa. DNA integration typically enhances protective instincts. She gestured toward a path materializing from shadow particles at the platform's edge. My facility lies beyond the sensory range of Eclipse's harvester drones. We should proceed immediately. Dimensional transition leaves distinctive energy signatures that monitoring systems will eventually detect. As they followed Amara along the shadow path, Naruto found himself unconsciously analyzing their unexpected ally with professional assessment. Her movement patterns suggested extensive combat training, each step precisely placed, balance perfectly maintained. Awareness extending in all directions without obvious visual checks. The shadow energy surrounding her responded to subtle shifts in her posture, simultaneously defensive and offensive in configuration. You're staring, she noted without turning, voice pitched for his ears alone. Professional assessment, Naruto replied honestly. Old habits. From your shinobi training, Amara observed, demonstrating knowledge he hadn't shared. At his questioning look, she elaborated, your energy signature contains distinctive chakra patterns. Shadow Grid operatives study all-dimensional energy systems. And what does your assessment tell you about me? He inquired, curious despite himself. This time she did turn slightly, those galaxy-filled eyes meeting his directly. You contain contradictions that should be impossible. Darkness and light, structured discipline and chaotic creativity, tremendous power and remarkable restraint. A pause, then with slightly less professional detachment. Fascinating contradictions. Before Naruto could respond to this unexpected personal observation, they crested a rise in the shadow landscape, revealing their destination. Like the jagged architecture of Eclipse's citadel, Amara's facility embraced organic curves, a compound that seemed to grow from the shadow landscape rather than imposing upon it. Subtle defensive systems integrated so seamlessly they nearly escaped notice, while energy barriers maintained environmental stability. Welcome to Shadowhaven, Amara announced without particular ceremony. Resistance add quarters and your temporary sanctuary in this dimension. Impressive operation for someone working against Eclipse in his own realm, Kira noted, professional respect tempering her earlier skepticism. The shadow dimension existed before Eclipse claimed it, Amara explained, leading them toward the main structure. Those of us born to its natural state understand its patterns in ways he never will. We hide in plain sight, using the very darkness he thinks he commands. As they approached the compound entrance, figures emerged to meet them, diverse beings united by their comfortable navigation of shadow energies. Some appeared nearly human, others decidedly not, but all carried themselves with the alert readiness of resistance fighters. Commander, a lieutenant acknowledged, offering Amara a respectful nod. Perimeter sensors detected the dimensional incursion. Countermeasures deployed as instructed. Well done, Amara replied. Prepare the synchronization chamber and alert our weapons division. We have an unprecedented opportunity. The lieutenant's gaze swept over the three champions, lingering briefly on Naruto with particular interest before returning to professional neutrality. Understood. Quarters have been prepared for our guests. As the resistance members escorted them into the compound, Elsa moved closer to Naruto, voice lowered for privacy. Your trust may be well placed, but maintain awareness. We're in an unfamiliar dimension with limited understanding of local politics. Agreed, he responded equally quietly. This resistance seems legitimate, but we know nothing about their broader objectives or how they might align with ours beyond opposing Eclipse. Plus, Kira added, joining their confidential exchange, our shadow assassin friend Ms. particularly interested in you specifically. That, energy synchronization, business sounds suspiciously vague. Naruto nodded acknowledgement of their concerns while maintaining outward composure. We need their technology and dimensional expertise to save Arendelle. For now, cautious cooperation serves our mission. As they entered the main facility, environmental systems adjusted to their physiological requirements, lighting increasing slightly, temperature moderating to comfortable levels. The consideration implied both technological sophistication and genuine accommodation of their needs, suggesting Amara's offer of alliance held at least some sincerity. Your synchronization procedure, Elsa addressed Amara directly as they reached what appeared to be a command center. What exactly does it entail for Naruto? The question's protective implication wasn't lost on anyone present. Amara paused, considering her response carefully before answering with unusual directness. The procedure requires him to channel both aspects of the grid simultaneously, something he already does through his Twilight morpher. Our equipment will record the specific resonance patterns created when light and shadow aspects achieve stable coexistence. She gestured toward a chamber visible through transparent walls, containing technology unlike anything they'd encountered previously. Non-invasive, temporary energy sampling only. No permanent effects. And this helps your resistance how, exactly? Kira pressed, arms crossed skeptically. Eclipse's power derives from corrupting the natural balance between light and shadow. Amara explained, activating a display that showed complex energy patterns. His harvester technology operates by forcing dimensional boundaries to collapse through artificial imbalance. Too much shadow consuming structured reality. The display shifted, showing theoretical models of balanced energy distribution. Our disruption weapons attempt to counter this by restoring equilibrium. But we've never achieved perfect balance, until now. Her gaze returned to Naruto. Your Twilight energy represents the theoretical ideal our scientists have sought for years. Quote, so you'll use his energy pattern to calibrate your weapons, Elsa summarized. Creating more effective countermeasures against Eclipse's technology. Precisely, Amara confirmed. Weapons that don't just temporarily disrupt harvester beacons but permanently neutralize them. Naruto considered the explanation, finding it scientifically sound based on what they'd learned about dimensional mechanics. More importantly, the application aligned with their immediate objective, destroying the beacon threatening Arendelle. I'll do it, he decided, raising a hand to forestall his companion's concerns. The potential benefits outweigh the risks, and time isn't on our side. Arendelle has less than 3 days before Eclipse's beacon reaches critical power. 2 days, 17 hours by local dimensional conversion. Amara corrected with precise calculation. The synchronization process requires approximately 4 hours, weapon calibration another 6. Accounting for transport time back to your dimension. That leaves minimal tactical margin. Then we should begin immediately, Naruto stated, decision made. Amara nodded once, professional efficiency returning as she issued orders to her team. As Resistance members prepared the synchronization chamber, she addressed all 3 champions collectively. While the procedure progresses, I'll provide comprehensive tactical briefing on PSE's operations and harvester neutralization protocols. Her gaze shifted specifically to Elsa and Kira, including dimensional stabilization techniques applicable to Arendelle's deteriorating boundaries. The offer represented valuable knowledge transfer beyond their immediate needs, a gesture that further suggested genuine alliance rather than mere exploitation. That would be most appreciated, Elsa acknowledged formally, though her posture remained protectively alert. As Naruto followed technicians toward the synchronization chamber, Kira caught his arm briefly, concern evident despite her attempt at casual tone. Just be careful in there, okay? We still need our Twilight Sage in one functional piece. Always he replied with a reassuring smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Despite his decision, healthy caution remained. They were still in an unfamiliar dimension with allies of convenience rather than proven loyalty. The synchronization chamber presented an elegant blend of technology and dimensional manipulation principles. Crystalline structures formed its foundation, while energy conduits of shadow material circulated throughout. At its center stood a platform, reminiscent of the convergence mapping design from Elsa's Ice Palace, though considerably more sophisticated in execution. The platform establishes resonance with your specific energy signature, a technician explained. Adjusting calibration settings, harmonic frequencies will be recorded without disrupting your personal connection to either grid aspect. Naruto examined the technology with genuine curiosity. You've clearly studied the morphing grid extensively. The shadow grid predates your dimension's understanding of morphing technology, the technician replied without arrogance, simply stating historical fact. Our civilization evolved alongside dimensional boundaries rather than within them. This casual revelation provided context Naruto had previously lacked. Amara's people weren't merely inhabitants of a shadow dimension but evolved specialists in dimensional mechanics. Their entire civilization developed around concepts most beings never encountered. As preparations completed, Amara returned, personally reviewing final settings before addressing Naruto. The process requires full manifestation of your Twilight energy. Unlike your typical morphing sequence, you'll need to maintain balanced output of both aspects simultaneously for extended duration. I've handled worse, Naruto assured her, taking position on the central platform. Perhaps, Amara acknowledged, something almost like concern briefly visible in those galaxy eyes. But dimensional energy manipulation can have unpredictable effects when sustained. If you experience disruption in your personal balance, signal immediately for termination. The warning held genuine concern beyond mere protection of valuable research subject, another small indicator supporting Naruto's initial trust assessment. Understood, he replied, centering himself as technicians activated the chamber's systems. Twilight Sage power, activate. Energy surged through him, the familiar transformation enhanced by the chamber's resonance technology. Silver-orange light erupted around his form, shadow and light aspects swirling in perfect equilibrium as his armor manifested. Remarkable, Amara murmured, prophase. Sional detachment momentarily abandoned as she observed the transformation's unique energy signature. Perfect harmonic balance without artificial stabilization. The chamber responded to his transformed state, crystalline structures illuminating in patterns that matched his energy fluctuations. Data streamed across monitoring stations as technicians recorded the previously theoretical Twilight resonance pattern. Maintain current output, Amara instructed, moving to a control console. We'll begin harmonic mapping momentarily. Through the chamber's transparent walls, Naruto could see Elsa and Kira watching intently from the adjacent briefing area, concern evident in their postures despite the tactical discussion clearly underway with resistance officers. As the synchronization procedure intensified, Naruto focused inward, maintaining the delicate balance between opposing grid aspects. Unlike his typical combat transformations, this sustained manifestation required deeper concentration, connecting him more fundamentally to the Twilight energy's true nature. Kit, Kurama's voice reached through their shared consciousness, something's happening. This synchronization is affecting our chakra network. Dangerous, Naruto questioned silently. Not precisely, the fox replied thoughtfully. More like evolutionary. The Twilight energy is integrating more fully with our natural systems. Externally, the chamber's instrumentation detected this deepening connection, readings spiking as Naruto's Twilight manifestation achieved previously unrecorded stability. Synchronization at 80%, a technician announced. Energy coherence exceeding theoretical models. Amara studied the readings with intense focus, her expression revealing genuine amazement beneath professional control. He's not just channeling balanced grid energy, he's harmonizing it with his native chakra system, creating a hybrid energy matrix that shouldn't be possible. As the procedure continued, Naruto experienced expanding awareness, perception extending beyond physical limitations to include dimensional currents flowing around them. The shadow dimension revealed itself more completely, its underlying structure becoming visible as patterns of energy rather than physical landscapes. Most surprisingly, he found himself perceiving emotional resonances from those nearby, not thoughts, but emotional signatures as distinct as fingerprints. Kira's protective concern tinged with competitive drive, Elsa's disciplined focus underscored by responsibility and controlled fear for her kingdom. And Amara, her emotional signature proved most complex. Disciplined professional purpose layered over deeply buried pain, genuine commitment to resistance ideals balanced again. Saint personal history too complicated to fully interpret. Most unexpectedly, he detected genuine fascination directed specifically toward him, not merely scientific interest in his Twilight abilities, but something more personally invested. This expanded perception faded as the synchronization reached completion, systems powering down as recorded data transferred to weapon calibration systems. As the chamber deactivated, Naruto's transformation receded, leaving him momentarily disoriented by the return to standard awareness. Synchronization complete, Amara announced, satisfaction evident in her tone. 100% successful data capture. Calibration processing underway. Naruto stepped from the platform, surprised to find his energy levels higher rather than depleted. That was different. Different how? Amara inquired, professional interest immediately engaged. Before he could formulate a response, Elsa and Kira joined them, both visibly relieved at his apparently unharmed condition. Everything all right? Kira asked, casual tone belied by genuine concern. Fine, Naruto assured them. Just experienced some unexpected perceptual effects during the procedure. Dimensional boundary perception, Amara identified immediately. A known side effect of sustained Twilight manifestation. Typically temporary. Is there anything else we should know about these known side effects? Elsa questioned, diplomatic politeness thinly veiling protective concern. Nothing detrimental, Amara replied evenly. If anything, the synchronization appears to have stabilized his Twilight connection. Energy readings show improved integration between grid aspects and his native chakra system. The assessment matched Kurama's internal observation, lending additional credibility to Amara's technical explanations. Before further discussion could develop, a lieutenant approached with urgent demeanor. Commander, he addressed Amara, perimeter sensors detect harvester drawn. S approaching from the eastern quadrant. Stealth protocol engaged, but full facility shielding recommended. Amara's expression hardened immediately to combat readiness. Initiate comprehensive countermeasures. All non-essential systems to minimal power. Deploy shadow mimics to diversion coordinates. As the resistance base shifted to alert status, she turned to her interdimensional guests. EC. Lipsa's detection systems must have identified your arrival signature despite our dampening efforts. Standard search pattern deployment. Will your countermeasures hold? Elsa asked, Frost already forming around her fingertips in automatic defensive response. Against standard drones, yes, Amara confirmed. But we should accelerate our timeline regardless. The weapon's calibration will continue under stealth protocols. But I recommend preparing for dimensional transition sooner than initially planned. You mean leave before the weapons are fully ready? Kira clarified, frowning. We can complete final calibrations at the transition point, Amara explained, leading them toward a secure operational center deeper within the facility. The disruption charges will be functionally complete, if not optimized to theoretical performance standards. As they entered the operational center, display screens showed harvester drones moving systematically through the shadow landscape, insectoid machines with multiple sensor arrays, systematically scanning for dimensional anomalies. Their search pattern appeared methodical rather than directed, suggesting general awareness of disturbance without specific targeting. Preliminary disruption charge assembly completed, a weapons specialist reported, presenting specialized devices that resembled crystalline grenades with shadow energy cores. Awaiting final calibration from synchronization data. Begin integration immediately, Amara ordered. Priority on functional deployment over optimal performance. As the resistance team executed these instructions with practiced efficiency, Amara provided tactical briefing to the three champions. These charges operate by temporarily restoring dimensional balance at their deployment point, effectively neutralizing Eclipse's harvester technology by countering its fundamental operational principle. She activated a tactical display showing Arendel's dimensional structure with the harvester beacon highlighted. The primary beacon must be targeted directly. Its outer shell will resist conventional attacks, but these charges will bypass physical protection by acting directly on dimensional frequencies. And the subsidiary collection points? Elsa inquired, studying the display with analytical precision. Secondary targets, Amara confirmed. Disrupting the main beacon will temporarily destabilize the entire network, creating vulnerability windows for conventional destruction of subsidiary nodes. How long will the disruption effect last? Naruto asked, tactical assessment already formulating mission parameters. Approximately 17 minutes by standard dimensional conversion, Amara replied with characteristic precision. Sufficient time to physically destroy the beacon's core components if properly coordinated. And after we destroy the beacon? Kira pressed. Eclipse clearly has interest in Arendelle specifically. He'll just deploy another harvester eventually. Hence these, Amara continued, revealing additional devices of more complex design. Dimensional stabilizers. Once the harvester network is eliminated, these can be deployed at key convergence points throughout your dimension, creating reinforced boundaries that resist future incursions. The thoroughness of the countermeasure package impressed all three champions, suggesting Amara's resis. Tance had indeed developed comprehensive strategies against Eclipse's operations. Not merely reactive defense but systematic counteraction. You've clearly been fighting this battle for some time, Elsa observed. Something like weary determination crossed Amara's features. Shadow grid specialists were among the first to recognize Eclipse's true nature, a perversion of natural dimensional balance rather than evolution of it. We've opposed his consumption campaign since the beginning. Without much success, Kira noted, not unkindly but realistically. We've preserved 37 dimensions that would otherwise have been consumed, Amara countered, though without defensiveness. Insufficient against Eclipse's growing power, but not insignificant to those saved. The response carried UIET pride alongside acknowledgement of limited effectiveness, honesty that further reinforced their developing trust in this unusual ally. Commander, the lieutenant interrupted, harvester drones adjusting search pattern. Converging toward northeastern quadrant. They've detected residual transition energy, Amara concluded grimly. Accelerate weapons preparation. We need to move our guests to extraction point within 30 minutes. Quote, as the operational tempo increased, Naruto found himself briefly separated from his companions as resistance members prepared equipment for their imminent departure. During this momentary isolation, Amara approached him directly, her professional demeanor softened slightly by what appeared to be genuine concern. The synchronization procedure revealed something unexpected. She stated without preamble, "Your Twilight energy contains a harmonic pattern we've only observed theoretically, perfect equilibrium between not just grid aspects but dimensional constants themselves." Meaning, Naruto prompted, sensing important information beneath the technical language. "Meaning you represent something beyond mere tactical advantage against Eclipse," Amara continued. Voice lowered despite the operational activity surrounding them. "True balance between fundamental forces. The multiverse protects such anomalies, creates conditions for their emergence. Hen existing balance faces extinction-level threat." The implications settled heavily. "You're saying I'm some kind of multiversal immune response to Eclipse?" "I'm saying your emergence is no coincidence," Amara clarified. "Nor is your gathering of champions from different dimensions. The multiverse itself appears to be coordinating countermeasures through you." Before Naruto could fully process this profound suggestion, alarm systems activated throughout the facility. Display screens showed harvester drones suddenly changing behavior, random search patterns shifting to coordinated convergence directly toward their location. "They've found us," Amara announced, operational command reasserting immediately. "Full evacuation protocol, priority on dimensional transition package." Resistance members moved with practiced urgency, securing essential equipment while deploying countermeasures against the approaching threat. Elsa and Kira rejoined Naruto as Amara coordinated defense preparations. "Situation?" Elsa inquired concisely. "Eclipse's forces have locked onto our location," Naruto summarized. "We're evacuating immediately." "Perfect timing," Kira commented with characteristic sarcasm. "Just when things were getting comfortable in Shadow World." Amara returned, personal equipment secured and tactical focus absolute. "Transition team ready. We have 14 minutes before perimeter defenses fail. Disruption charges are prepared. Not optimal calibration, but functionally complete. We need to reach the extraction point," Naruto stated, Twilight Morpher already active. "And scanning local dimensional stability." "Follow me," Amara directed, leading them toward a secured section of the facility. "And prepare for resistance. Once we leave the compound's primary shields, Eclipse's drones will have direct sensor contact." As they moved through progressively less populated sections of the resistance base, evidence of imminent evacuation surrounded them, non-essential systems powering down. Personnel securing sensitive materials, defensive countermeasures activating in sequence. "Your people," Elsa noted with concern. "Are they evacuating as well?" "Shadow diamonds. Ion natives can access emergency phase shifting," Amara explained without breaking stride. "Transitioning temporarily out of standard dimensional perception. Eclipse's drones cannot track phase-shifted signatures. But they can track us." Kira concluded grimly. "Precisely why we're moving quickly," Amara confirmed, leading them through a final security checkpoint to a chamber containing what appeared to be a dimensional gateway. Unlike the chaotic portal that had brought them to the shadow dimension, this technology exhibited controlled precision, a stabilized transition point between realities. "Dimensional coordinates locked on Arendelle," a technician reported, making final adjustments to the gateway. "Specific arrival point calculated for minimal detection probability." "Excellent," Amara acknowledged, accepting specialized equipment from a lieutenant. "Final weapons package. 4 primary disruption charges, 12 subsidiary neutralizers, and 6 boundary stabilizers. Plus tactical mapping of all Harvester network locations." She transferred the equipment to specialized carrying cases, distributing them efficiently among the 3 champions. Operation instructions are encoded in each device. Intuitive interface designed for field deployment without technical support. The comprehensive preparation impressed even Kira, whose healthy skepticism had gradually shifted toward professional respect. "You've thought of everything." "Shadow Grid operatives specialize in thorough contingency planning," Amara replied, though a hint of genuine concern slipped through her professional exterior. "But disruption charges have never been deployed without specialist oversight. There are risks." "We're familiar with high-risk operations," Naruto assured her, securing his portion of equipment. "And we don't have many alternatives." "True enough," Amara acknowledged. She hesitated briefly, then continued with uncharacteristic personal inflection, "I would accompany you if circumstances permitted. My expertise with the disruption technology would be valuable. Your resistance needs its commander," Elsa observed perceptively. "Particularly during evacuation." A shadow W of conflict crossed Amara's expression before resolving into determined focus. "Correct assessment, Queen Elsa. My responsibilities here must take precedence." Proximity alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. Displays showing harvester drones breaching outer defensive perimeters with unexpected efficiency. "They've deployed phase-sensitive detection," Amara identified, urgency entering her voice. "Faster adaptation than anticipated. We need to activate the gateway immediately." Technicians engaged final activation sequences, the dimensional portal stabilizing between precisely calibrated emitters. Unlike the chaotic vortex of natural rifts, this gateway presented as a controlled aperture between realities, Arendel's mountainous landscape visible through its structured opening. "Coordinates set for northern mountain range," the lead technician confirmed. "Approximately 2 kilometers from Harvester Beacon location. Minimal eclipse forces detected at arrival point." "Perfect," Naruto acknowledged, gathering his companions as they prepared for transition. "Thank you for everything, Commander Nightshade. Your assistance may well save Arendelle, and perhaps provide crucial advantage in the broader conflict," Amara added. Something uncharacteristically personal entered her typically controlled demeanor. "When you return to the Dimensional Archive, Naruto Uzumaki, remember that Shadow Grid specialists make valuable allies." The statement carried deeper meaning than its surface, a connection to their future meeting that would be her past, a complex temporal relationship established across dimensional boundaries. "I'll remember," Naruto promised, understanding the significance. Facility alarms intensified as external defenses continued failing. "Go," Amara urged, gesturing toward the portal. "The gateway will collapse after your transition. One-way journey to minimize dimensional detection footprint." The three champions moved toward the gateway, equipment secured and determination shared. At the threshold between dimensions, Naruto paused briefly, looking back at the Shadow Grid commander who had provided unexpected alliance. "We'll meet again," he stated with quiet certainty. "Different circumstances, same side." Something like a genuine smile briefly transformed Amara's severe features. "The multiverse has strange patterns, Twilight Sage. I look forward to discovering where ours intersect next." With those enigmatic words lingering, the three champions stepped through the dimensional gateway, transition energy washing over them as they returned to Arendel's reality. Behind them, the portal collapsed precisely as designed, severing connection to the shadow dimension as Amara's resistance base completed evacuation protocols. They materialized on a mountainside overlooking familiar territory, Arendelle visible in the distant valley, the North Mountain's distinctive peak nearby. Most importantly, approximately 2 kilometers ahead, an unnatural darkness pulsed rhythmically against the afternoon sky, Eclipse's Harvester Beacon, now clearly visible to their enhanced perception. "We made it back," Hira observed, orienting herself quickly. "And right on target, apparently." With less than 2 days remaining before the beacon reaches critical power, Elsa added, frost forming unconsciously around her as she gazed toward the distant corruption threatening her kingdom. Naruto surveyed their position, tactical assessment already formulating approach vectors toward the Harvester Beacon. The equipment Amara had provided represented their best hope of neutralizing Eclipse's consumption technology, specialized weapons developed by Resistance with intimate understanding of their enemy's methods. "Time to put our shadow dimension detour to good use," he stated. Determination hardening his features as he accessed the tactical mapping data. "Let's end Eclipse's plans for Arendelle." The mountainside breeze carried our resolve as three champions from different dimensions prepared to confront a threat to all reality. Their journey through the shadow dimension had provided unexpected allies and crucial technology, transforming accidental dimensional transit into strategic advantage. Now, armed with disruption charges and newfound knowledge, they faced their most critical mission yet, one with an entire dimension's survival hanging in the balance. The Harvester Beacon pulsed its ominous rhythm in the distance, unaware that its destruction was now not merely possible, but imminent. The final phase of Arendelle's defense had begun. Chapter 3 End. The End. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.